So, it is the finale of Andor, Series 1, we'll say. So that's the first 12 episodes, and there's a Series 2 that is going to be coming out at some point. We don't know specifically when. I hope next year, but I imagine we'll be waiting longer than that. But we shall see. So I'm here with the final Comics in Motion discussion episode on Andor until Series 2 comes out. And I am joined by two very important people, just in general life, obviously, but also specifically to this Andor discussion. So the first person is Mr. Dave Horrocks, who is one of the podfathers of Comics in Motion. So we wouldn't be doing this here if you hadn't started podcast number 4273 with Chris Phelps.
Cheers, mate. Cheers for having us. And, all the credit goes to you for keeping the flag flying for Star Wars, because you know what? When Star Wars was not that popular, you were still a massive fan, and that shone through all those years back now. And now it's a bit more popular, a bit more content, I would say, and people are a bit less pissed about the sequels. But no, it's brilliant to speak to you. It is a shame, of course. I mean, I think you and Jack have tag teamed brilliantly in the episodes. It's been a really interesting format because you get a completely different opinions week to week. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a shame that we're missing out on Jack on this finale, but still, I won't feel too sad because I get to speak here. So
yeah, it's one of those, especially with us in the Comics in Motion group. There's so many podcasts that everyone's doing all the time, and when one's personal life gets busy, then it's just like, I can't be on. I was saying I'm doing like 3 podcasts this week and 3 podcasts next week, as I'm trying to push to try not to have too many around Christmas. So occasionally people just have to dip out, and that's always fine. That's one of the many brilliant things about Comics in Motion. There's no pressure for anyone. But speaking of no pressure, but someone who has swooped in, and because of certain individuals being unable to make it for perfectly good reasons and things, we've got Maff with us, one of the newest members of Comics in Motion, who has come in for this Andor discussion and just been a guest 3 amazing times. Thank you very much, Maff, for swooping in and being on the Andor discussion show with us.
Thank you for having me again. I've just been fortunate that I got invited to this, and the show's been so easy to talk about. I've actually felt I've got more being able to come and talk about it as well. So but I'm sorry that Jack's in here, but again, like Dave says, we get to come here and finish it up and enjoy this finale, which was all right, wasn't
it? yeah, that's one word I'd use to describe it. All right. I think though I'd use it as 2 words. It's all right. So all thumbs up. But we will delve into the finale. But just before we do, let's have a little reminder of how we all kind of felt about Andor up to this sort of point in general, because obviously we've both spoken to yourselves before, but just before this finale and that last episode, which was incredible as well, the daughter of Ferrix, obviously. What did you both think up to this point going in? Just a couple of sentences of just round up what you were feeling before going into this episode. We'll go you, Maff, first.
Now, I did say I was going to try not use all the words that I've used before to describe this, but it's just so good storytelling. It is some of the best TV I've seen, and I've just felt that it's one of those series that I felt I've gone along with, and I've followed this path that Andor has taken. And, I'm sad that we're going to have to wait. It's probably going to be 2024, I reckon, when we'll get it. But it's just been a pleasure to be able to watch it. And it's been even more a pleasure to come along and talk about it. But the storytelling has just been fantastic. It really has.
Mm-hmm. I agree completely. And what about you, Dave? What did you think up till this point?
Well, a weird sort of tangent, but this is the second podcast Maff and I have done this week, and we were waxing lyrical. We were on 20th Century Geek, although that probably won't come out for another few weeks, talking about Police Academy, the first 4 movies there. And we took that arena as a chance to try and get Scott to watch Andor because he hasn't started watching it yet. So we were just waxing lyrical about all the reasons why you should watch it. So yeah, it was clear we both absolutely love it. It was in the back of my mind. I wondered that so many series have failed to stick the landing. Things like Lost, even Dexter, which I think it was so consistent, like every single episode all the way and got to the final episode, failed to stick the landing. You look at Game of Thrones, brilliant. Last season, atrocious. So I was coming into this and thinking, I just hope they can stick the landing. And I think that's up for debate, and I'm sure we'll speak about it. But honestly, it's been so good. I mean, again, what we'd said, Scott, was it just happens to be in the Star Wars universe, but it's just great storytelling. It's great writing. The casting is brilliant. With things like Obi-Wan, with Mandalorian, they've done a lot of the cinematography in the volume, haven't they? So, and you can kind of tell it's so clever how they do it, and obviously they can stick to a budget there. But with this, it almost feels old school. It feels like you have to be on a set. You have to have 100 extras. And so I like that authenticity that it brings. And I think that's the part of this final episode that I think, is still consistent. But I still think this is far and above everything that we've seen in the Star Wars universe in those kind of post-Disney World days, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think it's the best series as well. Rebels is still my favourite, but Rebels had 4 series to get on its feet, and Andor has had 1. The amount of hours, maybe you could argue, timing-wise. Actually, no, because I suppose less episodes and things. But regardless of trying to get into the ins and outs of those minutes, it's still, I think, is the best made Star Wars show. And for live action, I think it is the best. I really like Mandalorian, but I've said before, Mandalorian for me is an amazing Star Wars show. If you're into Star Wars, it's incredible. It's got almost everything you could ever want. But if you want something that's going to attract people who aren't necessarily that fussed about Star Wars, kind of like Rogue One did in certain ways, where it's like, it doesn't matter if you know all these characters' names or anything, it's irrelevant. This is actually just a story that is set in Star Wars. It's not a Star Wars story, which ironically is what Rogue One, that was called. But I really enjoyed it all the way up to the finale, and then I will say I thoroughly enjoyed the finale. I did think they stuck the landing, but I will say that I think I prefer the last episode slightly more. I think it just had one little extra, just big ending kind of part. There's a bit of Lutheran rail and the tractor beam. I don't even know if I mentioned it last time, but him getting caught in the tractor beam and then letting loose the space junk, and because the tractor beam was pulling on it so much.
Oh, so good, that slingshot effect.
Yeah. Oh, it was so cool. I loved that. And it's like in this episode,
I thought he was dead. Totally thought he was dead, and then pulls off that move. What a legend!
I thought he's got. The thing is, he has the antiques shop, so he's got so much tech. Well, obviously there was going to be something there. It was nice to see the space lightsabers, which is the first time we've seen something like that, and I thought it was nice. I'd rather not see too much of that. I like the fact that we don't have lightsabers, we don't have kind of force users. It's very much a gritty kind of series, and it's very grey as well from both sides. I think I've said it before, but the fact that we've got the Empire and the Rebels, and they're both doing things that maybe they shouldn't be doing, but to get to where they need to be, and I think that's one of the things that I'm enjoying more about it, because although it's in Star Wars, that's just a bonus. This story would work anyway.
It's like a self-contained story.
Yeah.
Well, what I'd just like to say as well, that scene that we were talking about with the whole, all the, not shrapnel, but all the junk, being a slingshot and basically taking out the radar when he's getting pulled in by the tractor beam. If he had a co-pilot with him there, you could just imagine him saying to him, I've got some maneuvers, watch this. And he pulls off that trick and stuff, as opposed to the original Star Wars, which I love, which is, don't worry, kid, I've got some maneuvers. Move slightly to the left, and I know Family Guy Blue Harvest
Yep.
took the piss out of it, but it's like, oh, this guy knows some maneuvers, but he did absolutely nothing. Whereas, here we got to see some maneuvers, so I did appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought he was going to use like a slingshot thing. I can't remember if I've seen it in Star Wars or somewhere else where a ship is getting pulled in a track to be in one direction. You pull your thrusters in that way, so they use the strongest. And then I thought he was going to like spin around and then full force go forward and like activate like his hyperdrive and basically just fire his engines so he'd break through.
Like a Last Jedi sort of thing.
Yeah, kind of a slingshot sort of thing. Yeah, that's what I kind of thought he might do. But this episode, the finale, Rick's Road is called, and it's a nice little, every single character, basically every thread, all entangles here in some ways. Some of them seem to have real interest in and intrigue to them, and then others just kind of seem to be there. So I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit. But let's just we'll jump around and stuff, because I'm sure we'll tackle each element of this, but without sticking too chronologically. Favorite moments. Let's just dive straight in, just to mix it up a little bit. What did we think? Like, what was a part of this that maybe not your 100% favorite, but something that really stood out that you just found was some a peak of the episode? If I go with you, Dave, first.
I think the moment where Marva, essentially, she's playing. I mean, again, we've seen the hologram effect, haven't we? Right from that first movie. And what I like is something new, but something that reminds me of the old as well. So we saw in the original movie, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope." So you're seeing this reflection, this recording, this hologram recording. And obviously in this case, Marva's dead, but she's recorded this. And that seems to be the thing that's lit the fire. You've had all this discontent. You've had all these different groups who are a bit pissed off. You've got the Judean People's Front and the People's Front of Judea and the Popular People's Front. You got all these different factions, and they just can't fucking unite and actually come together because they all have different ideals, and they're all a bit pissed off. It's like us with the British government, isn't it? What a bunch of absolute see next Tuesdays. But, what would really what would make us take to the streets and just say, we're not putting up with this anymore? It would take a lot, wouldn't it? Because once you're downtrodden by the Empire, you're living your day-to-day life. And I like the fact that, when the Empire, when the Death Troopers and whatever, they're kind of getting to know, oh shit, this is going the wrong way. This is causing trouble. And they're trying to cover it up and stuff. And then it sort of starts to, ignite the riot. I love that bit. And again, I've made the parallels between Andor and Game of Thrones a lot. And I think the best thing I could say about this series is, I think this deserves to be rewatched multiple times. Hand on heart, as much as I've said I've loved The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, okay, I'll watch the Mandalorian episodes, but I've not gone back to rewatch them. Even the Marvel series, I haven't really gone back to rewatch them because I don't feel like I have to. I watched them, I was invested at the time, but after the event, I don't feel like I needed to go back. This is so dense. There are so many characters. There are so many interwoven threads going on here. I feel like I've missed out. So I've watched it. You're dragged along by the story. You have to be, but I want to go back and I want to watch it again because there's more I know that I haven't picked up on that I can pick up on again. And so that is the best thing. And I think there were several riots and stuff. I think it was about series 3 where just people have just had enough, and ignite this whole riot and they're trying to get Joffrey away. And, it's just chaos. And that's what this felt like. And actually the moment where the girl from the ISB, gets dragged off, that kind of reminded me of that Game of Thrones moment as well. So just the whole riot, and it felt like all the things that had built up with Mon Mothma and all these different threads, that was leading up to this moment, but this was the spark. This was what really started the rebellion. And so that's what I really liked. And we'll get to the end credit as well. That was kind of but that was a nostalgia moment that you could get in like Obi-Wan or Mandalorian or whatever. This was different.
Nice. And what about you, Maff? What was your sort of favourite part, similar to Dave's, or was it slightly different or more specific? Let us know.
Well, I would have said Graves, but obviously he's gone through that. The other thing that I actually quite liked as well, it was very clever. It was the Momofa bit in the back of the car. The fact that I believe she's playing in Perrin and that, and giving herself a bit of a kind of get out of the jail card in case.
I thought that as well.
Yeah, that's how I take it. Because she accuses him of obviously doing the gambling and that, and she's saying, "Don't do it here. Go back to." This is a bit where Mike tells us where they were. There we go. And the look on his face is like, I haven't done. I know most of us have probably been in that situation where we're accused of something. It's like, no, I haven't done all. I know I haven't done all. But she asked for that privacy from the driver, knowing full well he's going to listen, knowing full well she's being spied on. And again, it's so well played by her. The fact that she knows that she's kind of giving herself a little bit of a cover here. But even when she's done it, that look on her face of, I can't believe I've kind of set him up to do this. And that. But again, it's just little things like that throughout the series, I think, is what makes it. It's just little stories that we get here and there. I did try and look today, but I couldn't find. Cassian is, obviously, it's Andor, it's called Andor, but he's not in it. Although he's in every single episode, he doesn't seem to be the focal point as such, because there's so many different little stories that we're kind of interacting with, which I think is what makes it so good. Dave mentions Game of Thrones. One of the good things about that is because there were so many different families that you were following. It breaks the story up, but keeps you so intrigued and wanting to know what's going to happen next. I think that's. I mean, the whole, Andor's mother is absolutely fantastic, and it sets it up, and it was right for the end of the series, the season. But yeah, there are so many little different things, different stories that are going on in the background, as opposed to what we're actually watching. Is one of the things I'm really enjoying about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely. And it is. I'm just looking at my notes of vaguely. It's like Andor probably he did a big act, but his actual screen time and his involvement in the riots, obviously he wasn't involved. He basically was on the very edge. He just kind of witnessed it all, and he's just the adoptive son of. He in a part kind of sparked it inadvertently when he had the first run-in with Cyril, but Marv was on her own path of rebellion with or without Andor. So it's like he did kind of somewhat give her a push. I think vaguely alludes to that, kind of like, you've already started something now, you need to leave and all that other stuff. But that is a part of this where it is odd, and I know a lot of people online have been saying they should have called it Spark of the Rebellion or something like that, and I feel like if they'd have called it that, then people would be moaning it's got too much Andor in it. So I think they went for the safer option of being like, let's call it Andor, and then it can be about the rebellion. And if we have a lot of episodes that are Andor-centric, we don't get people moaning that there's too much Andor. Whereas if they just called it that rebellion, they'd be like, okay, you're focusing on Mon Mothma and these other characters, but why Andor? So I feel like that might have been a reason. But also one of the things that I really liked this episode, and I thought that, the riot part was incredible. I think the music, for me, was probably the highlight, I'd say. Not that any of the other parts, that and Nemik's manifesto monologue. Those, obviously, there's a couple of amazing speeches in this, but Nemik's manifesto, I love that. I want to hear that, and basically, I would like to hear a passage from that in every episode of Series 2. I'd be well up for that. It's so well written, and I love, I think it's Alex Lautner, the actor who plays Nemik. I really like him in the other stuff I've seen him in. So whenever I hear his voice, like, oh, cool, you know. But the music specifically, when you've got the funeral going on, and obviously when we were watching it, Megan asked, she was like, oh, why? What are they kind of doing? And I was like, well, I think what they're doing is basically just starting the 2 hours earlier. They obviously said they want to start at 12. The Empire said, no, you're starting at 2. And then they were like, oh, it's going to start in a few hours. Then a scene or two later, they're starting. And everyone was like, why are they starting early? So I think that was one of the things. I was like, oh, I think that's why they were doing that. But the whole time you've got the marching band kind of thing walking down the street and all those instruments. And it was just so beautiful. And I saw something online yesterday. I try not to look at other people's thoughts, but one of the things was we get so much death in Star Wars, including of mother figures, and we don't really get that many funerals or any real closure in a lot of them. And you think about, like, in Star Wars, it's basically the end of a movie. A lot of the time, if someone's died, they're on the pyre of some degree or things like that. But it's not like a whole thing that's central to the character's funeral. There's a bit about Padme as well, you know, in end of episode 3, but it's still not that detailed. Whereas in this, it was a full, like, tradition and the music, and it started off quite solemn and slow, and then it kind of did that slightly more uplifting kind of style as they kind of came more together and the people marching down the street. I loved that. I basically loved the main point of this episode, the kind of the focal point, which is Marva's actual funeral, was phenomenal. I think it was so well done. I just think there's a couple of characters on the edge that didn't really need to have been there in that kind of respect. But so is there anything sort of, we've spoken about our favourite parts. Is there anything that speaks out of you that maybe you did find that was not perfect, something that you kind of were somewhat critical of in this episode? If we start with you, Maff, if you have anything.
Well, can I just go back?
Yeah, go ahead. Jump back and forward.
The music for the funeral march.
Yes.
You've heard it every single episode because it's the start of the title screen. It started off, and you know, it was just, I was doing a bit of research earlier on today, and someone pointed out the fact that that funeral march is the start of when Andor comes up, and I thought, no. And then I went back and I'm looking on YouTube and I'm playing it on Disney at the same time, and it's like, it is. And
wow.
It's so clever that something they've finished off with has been there all along, and just building and building and building each week. Again, it's clever little things that they've done like this, which I think, you know, just elevates it, you know. But sorry, what was the question?
We're still on music. Dave, do you have anything to add about the music before we delve on to?
I completely agree about the music. I thought it was fantastic. It just, you don't notice it when music's bad, but when you feel emotions, quite often my brain will switch to, oh, what's the music doing? It's a weird thing because I don't really pay attention that much to the music, but now I'm sort of trained because I know what they're doing, the bastards. You know, it's like, oh, I feel some kind of emotion, and then I remember, oh, right, okay, what's the music doing? It's just through, like, watching lots and lots of movies over the years, and you realise, like that original Star Wars, it's like, take away the John Williams score and would the movie be the same movie? I don't think it would. So, yeah, I think this episode was brilliant in terms of the music. And again, before we get on to any negatives, I just want to go back to Maff's point about Mon Mothma, because I thought the same thing. And there's an element of doubt for me, because the way they shot the scene was like from the driver's perspective. You could see his face, his puzzled or inquisitive face, you know, when she's saying stuff about his gambling. So, you know, this guy is a spy. Now, is it that he's a spy and she doesn't know and he's going to shop her, you know, and then she's going to be fucked, and that's why she has to leave her family and go into hiding or whatever? Oh, it'd be so good if she's just fucking throwing that shitty husband of hers under the bus. And that puts Mon Mothma right up there for me. Like, just absolute mastermind. Like, tactical play, brilliant. She's up there with Cersei for me if she's done that. So we'll only see that in season 2, but I've still got that doubt. Are they just playing a simpler story? But I would love it if she's said that dialogue about his gambling. In here in Coruscant, when she's trying to hide the money, which we heard in the previous episode. I would love that. I would absolutely love that. So yeah, I think, and before we get on to any negatives, I just think that the season has been brilliant. I'm almost a little bit sad that I'm kind of happy and sad there's going to be a second season because, okay, there's going to be a second season. So if it's consistent with the first, then I'm going to love it. But we've kind of seen now his journey. We've seen him go from, someone who's a bit of a chancer, he's trying to make his way in the world and he doesn't adhere to the Empire's ideals or anything, but he's not a particular revolutionary. He's not bought into it. He's just trying to make his own way to now he's like, either kill me or sign me up. So that's been his transition. Now he's gone from that position he was in to fully signed up, sign me up for the fucking rebellion, I'm in. And I love that.
Yeah, well, while you're speaking about season 2 and things, I believe that very minor spoilers in the organisation of what series 2 is going to be like if you're concerned about that stuff, but it's basically going to be series 1 is the first year-ish of Andor's life, and then each few episodes is going to be another year up to the Rogue One. That's generally what they've kind of said. So with that structuring, it's going to be a lot more arc based and a lot more like a hard end of an arc, I imagine, when they do these things. But it is going to be, one of them's got to be how him and K2SO meet. That's whether that's the last one or the first one, who knows, but that's going to happen probably with B2 Emo. That'd be cool if it does, but we'll see. Because I think that some of the dialogue in this episode, especially where he was talking and he was like, I can always count on you, that sort of thing. It's like, I imagine that's quite involving with it, because there is a comic about how Andor and K2SO met, but a lot of people thinking it's probably going to get retconned, or who knows, but the comic's all right. It's not amazing, it's not bad.
That little red robot, right? There's something about that. I'm thinking, well, maybe he just meets K2SO or something, but the little red R2-D2 type thing.
B2 Emo?
There you go. I don't know. I just feel like his consciousness or something gets transferred into that Imperial robot. Because when we met, the Imperial version of K2SO, he was a douchebag, wasn't he? So it's like, you can't imagine just convincing him to be different. So I don't know, just because he didn't really do much. I guess you could argue R2-D2 didn't do much, but I don't know. Maybe I'm making the wrong leap there, but it just feels to me like there's something more that little red robot's got to do for us.
I agree.
Well, B2 Emo, the guy who voices him, he's in a lot of the Star Wars stuff, actually. He's the voice of BB-8, or the sounds of BB-8. He is in Rogue One, but I couldn't find what he actually did in Rogue One. Obviously, K2SO is a different voice actor. But, if they don't do it, if they don't plan to do it, Disney, if you are listening, please do it, because it would work. And that, but, he said earlier on in the series about Cassian, you always ask me to do this, you always ask me to watch out. And he says at the end of this, it would just be a fitting kind of story arc for B2 Emo. We see him getting pulled around and knocked up in the end of this episode. So he could, he looks knackered already. Maybe he's so knackered that they have to move him across. Now, whether they then get, I don't know the actor's name. I know he was in Firefly.
Alan Tudyk.
Yeah.
Legend.
Whether they get him to come back into to do season 2, and that I'm sure he would do. He's as much of a geek as everybody else.
Yeah.
But it's the way that we all see the story arc going, and hopefully they do that. If they don't, fair enough. It's one of them things. But it would be fitting. That little droid has been through so much. I mean, you kind of forget the fact that like R2-D2 and C-3PO, that in the originals they're accepted to a certain degree like people, but you're watching it, you still think the droids. The fact that the last episode when Marva died, he didn't want to be on his own, and he asked Brasso to stay with him, and you realise that there's a consciousness here. This isn't just a bucket of bolts. There's something more, and he's one of the characters that I really enjoyed, even though he's very short. He's like Nemec. They managed to put characters in there that you only see for a short amount of time, but you really do care about them. And it's obviously good writing that they've been able to do it that way. But I do hope there is more for that little droid.
Mm. Yeah, I agree completely with all those things. So what we'll do it like a sandwich, this. So we've done a lot of nice things. We'll do a couple of the critiques, and then there's loads of other great things that are going to come out that I do want to talk about. I do want to focus more on the good, as I usually do on this show, but it's just more interesting. I'd rather not end it on that. So just a couple of things that, as this episode, I'd still give it like an 8 out of 10. I think it was absolutely fantastic. It maybe 8.5, but there's just, because the riot and everything they did in the main focal point with Marva and etc., all done absolutely brilliantly. But one of the main characters I think I was a bit disappointed by, and I don't really see where it went, was Vel and Cinta. I mean, it was cool seeing Cinta stab that dude, and I was like, oh, cool. You had to kill Dedra's bodyguard guy, escort, so that she could kind of be alone, and then Cyril could sweep in and get her. But it's like, but aside from you doing that, what did Vel do? Apart from kind of tell Luthen, I guess, and I think, but he was already there as well. And you're just like, so Luthen's just there kind of watching, and then Vel's there also kind of watching, and then Cinta's there also watching, but watching really, really intently. And none of them actually do anything apart from Cinta killing that one person, because he just stopped her. She didn't go out to kill him. She was just trying to escape, and then kind of just was like, oh, I'm getting stopped, stab. So that was one part. I don't know if I maybe missed something with those three characters. Obviously, Luthen at the end, there was a point, but he didn't have to be there, really, I don't think. It was just kind of Cassie maybe seeing him and kind of realising a bit. But it was more Cinta and Vel. I was just a bit like, what is happening with them? So I didn't know if either of you two had any thoughts on those two characters.
I think they probably wanted it to have a bit more weight than it really did. When a really good baddie gets their comeuppance, I mean, it's so satisfying, isn't it? It's just, even though you're seeing this horrendous thing, sticking someone with a knife, shanking them, like, you should be like horrified by it as a human being. But when someone's been an absolute bastard, it's like, yeah, fucking give it to him. So I think it probably, they thought it would have more weight, but I think they needed him to be a little bit more of a bastard. They needed a bit more screen time for that to really, really land. But I think it was one of those moments where I was thinking, you know what, this is what demands the rewatch, because I don't really remember what did he do. And with it being a weekly format, maybe it would benefit from a bit of a binge watch, because you're like, oh, I remember exactly what he did. So yeah, I just feel like it that bit in particular, it just didn't really land for me. It was good to see her, get a bit of payback, but it didn't feel proportionate considering what she'd been through.
Yeah, and Vel seemed to just completely disappear.
Yeah.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah. Vel seems to be them trying to have a line between Mon Mothma and the rebels in a way, because it's Mon Mothma's, is it a sister? No, cousin?
I think cousin.
Cousin, yeah. That is possibly one of the things in the season where it falls flat. They came off the planet after a fantastic 3 episode, and I think we'd said before that it would have been fine if that had been it with them, and they've carried them on. Now maybe they're going to play into season 2. Maybe there's a bit more. I understand Cinta was, on Ferrix to kind of watch out for when Andor came home, but it did. You could have cut out quite a bit of the season just by not having the moments that really didn't mean much, and it could have. The way they could have done it is get to a point where maybe Cinta's cornered Andor, and if Luthen had come in and said, "No, don't kill him," I want to, because there's a moment in the speech where you see Luthen watching the speech and he's thinking, "This woman is what we need," and she kind of talks about Andor in a way, and if Luthen had gone, "Do you know what? We're not going to kill Andor. We're going to have him and try to recruit him," and if it had maybe come in at that point and said to Cinta, "Look, we're not taking him out anymore. We're going to recruit him," it could have had a bit more meaning. But yeah, it felt that there was, maybe they had an idea and it never kind of came to fruition. Really, it just kind of that's possibly the only part in the series that it's just it never felt like it finished off. Again, maybe it's further down the line.
Yeah, I feel like with Vel, I thought what was going to happen because Cinta seems so much more in it for the cause, and Vel started to kind of doubt things a bit more, and obviously Mon was like warning her of Luthen Rael, and we don't really know, what the connection is between the Mothma and Rael and how they kind of know each other, how they got to know each other, how that kind of relationship got fostered. Maybe we won't know, maybe we will, but I assume it's because of Vel. But I was like, oh yeah, Vel's a cool character, I liked her. And then I saw her doing stuff in Coruscant. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is going to go somewhere. Maybe when she connected to Cinta, I was like, oh, they're going to have some sort of fight, I think. And then she's going to stop her from doing something. So I thought Cinta, as you kind of said, Maff, I thought Cinta was going to go after Andor, and then Vel was going to kind of push her at the last minute. So the gun, the thing, sniper's aiming at someone, you push them and then it doesn't kill them. I thought it was going to be something maybe like that, or that Cinta was going to attack Andor and Vel was going to save him for something. But they spent a lot of time in the last few episodes going like, we're going to get someone to kill Andor. We're going to get Luthen Rails. And then you're like, okay, they're going to sit nearby and just kind of watch them just for a while and then just disappear. And then Luthen's there. If they were on the ship with Luthen and then they kind of came with Luthen, kind of he spoke to them and he was like, what happened? And they were like, we don't think Andor's bad. We shouldn't kill him, whatever. When Andor came out, maybe, or maybe Andor comes out with Vel and Cinta on Luthen's ship, and it's a kind of like a power thing in a way. I don't know. They could have done loads of things, but it just felt like for characters that I was quite interested by, as Maff says in that kind of arc, they just didn't really go anywhere, and they didn't even show up at the end. So I was just like, where are they? What's happened? Have you just forgotten about them? They just still on Ferrix, just in separate abandoned buildings. Don't know. But were there any other, before we delve back into a lot of the brilliant elements of this, Dave, do you have any sort of other critiques you found of either this episode or the series as a whole?
Not really, and I'm very mindful. It is a first watch.
Yes.
And I feel like to give a proper critique, I do need to watch it again because of all of the different things going on, and I just don't really feel like I understood everything. I've been through the Game of Thrones series multiple times, and so each time you pick up on more of the dialogue because it means more when they say like this thing's happening, and it's like, oh right, I know where that is and stuff. So I guess that it's just a feeling as opposed to a concrete analytical, okay, this is the way it is. But I think after what was it, One Way Out episode, that was such a high. And you're thinking, man, they're going to have to do something pretty special to top that. And I don't think they topped it. I think that was the peak. The One Way Out was the peak. That whole build-up of emotion where you can see Andy Serkis's character, he ends up in this kind of leadership position. and he's shitting it. He doesn't know actually what to say. And Andor doesn't even know what to say, but he knows that this guy has the authority. He has the power. He has the respect. So it's this interesting dynamic, and just the way it was shot, the way it unfolded, I just thought was fantastic, and the emotion of it. And Jesus Christ, when it gets to the point when you realize you can't swim, and I'm like, oh, I just ripped my heart out, for fuck's sake. You know what I mean? We didn't get that high in this episode, and I think to really, really stick the landing, they needed to up it. And this series is better than Mandalorian. However, if you look at like Mandalorian, you're probably going, each episode is a 6 or 7. It's very episodic, isn't it? Whereas Andor, there's a definite arc to the whole season. But Mandalorian season 2, you're going 6s and 7s, and then you get to that finale, and Jesus Christ, it's an exponential curve. It just goes off the scale, because of the thing that happens at the end there. So I just don't. There was nothing that felt negative about the episode, just that it didn't hit the highs of really, being a finale and being like, holy shit, I cannot wait for the next season. Because it kind of felt satisfying. Like I say, we kind of know where the end is. And we've seen Andor, he's gone from being this chancer. Actually, it's the Han Solo arc, isn't it? He suits himself, and then right at the end, you're all clear, kid. Now let's blow the joint and go home. That's Andor. So I'm not. I kind of want to watch Andor series 2 or season 2, as the Americans say, but I'm not chomping at the bit. So that is the only overriding negative I think I've got to say.
Very, very interesting points. Yeah, I would be inclined to agree. Where I think phenomenal series as a whole, but I think I may have said this in the previous one, but it is kind of like it's not like the prequels. The prequels, there's a lot of duff moments, but there's a lot of, for me, moments that top almost anything in Star Wars, primarily in episode 3. But there's just certain moments that are unparalleled for me. Whereas the original trilogy, there's not really a bad beat. Really, there's a couple of like, Leia and Luke are kissing, but like apart from that, those kind of things, realistically, it's all very consistent and it's all brilliant. And there are definitely moments in the original trilogy, primarily towards the end of each film. It's got those but it's not like a moment as much. It's more of like a scene that's just amazing to see. And I think that with Mandalorian, as it were, and I found that with the Jedi episode as well, where Ahsoka appears. With both of those, I was just like, this was like, oh my god, the whole episode. I was like, oh my god. Whereas this, I was like, this is amazing television, and I am thrilled to watch it. But the writers were great and everything like that. And I'm actually going to change something I said earlier, which was I said I liked the prior episode before. I do not believe I did. Looking at my own notes about it and remembering what I kind of said, I did prefer this episode, but I wanted a moment in this episode. With Saw Gerrera. Because I love Saw Gerrera. I think we're going to get a Saw Gerrera arc in the next series, probably a major Mon Mothma arc, probably a major K2SO arc, and then probably a big pre-Rogue One kind of arc. I imagine that's kind of what's going to be, and I'd be so up for that. I imagine the Saw Gerrera arc, I imagine that's when Luthen Rail's going to go, because we haven't seen him elsewhere, so who knows about that. But I think that the Luthen Rail part in the last episode was that kind of high we were speaking about in some ways. It wasn't quite as high as, some of the Mando Series 2 finale, but it was like a really cool ship moment when he shot out the staff and it got the tractor beam, and then he did have those lasers, and I was like, that's really cool. But then it lays the question, this is like before the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, and we haven't seen this anywhere before, to what I can recall. I think there's TIE Defenders have like some sort of lasery thing, but it's not quite the same. So it's like, why is only Luthen Rail got it? I hope they do a line in one of in the series, and the next one they go, oh, those laser things are cool, and then he goes, yeah, they cost like 5 million credits per laser or something, and you have to refuel them every time you use them, so they're only for extreme situations. And then I'd be like, okay, fair enough, that makes sense why the Rebellion haven't got them. But you're just thinking, surely that would have really, really helped going against dozens of TIE fighters. You would just fly through them and spin and do that, and you'd destroy them all. So that's a mild tangent of mine. Maff, did you have any sort of critiques on top of what we've been saying, or anything to add to what we've been saying about Andor or the series as a whole?
I don't know. Now, I think this may be where a second watch through will maybe clear up Anton Clegan. He gets mentioned several times, and we know that he's died on the ship, and the ISB kind of sent him in as a trap. But I didn't. I may have missed something there, but I didn't really understand that part. And he cropped up several times. It came up when Luthen's talking with Saw Gerrera, and obviously, I think Luthen was aware that he was dead because the spy had told him it was a trap. But it's something that came up several times, and I was lost on that. Now, again, maybe that's something I've just missed, or it's not been explained, and that there's another watch through which Dave mentioned about. If we were to watch this again, I wouldn't binge through it all, but what I would do is I would watch it in 3, 4, then 2, because they are like little films, and they do lead on. But that's the only thing where I'm a little bit. You make a big thing about this guy, and I didn't really understand what the purpose of him was.
Yeah, it was the general idea of it was a ship got found. It had connections to rebels, so the ISB killed the pilot and made it look like it was an accident, so that the ship would then go back when Krieger came to recover it. This rebel cell came to recover it. They would just think, "Oh, it's fine," and then the ISB, I think they put a tracker in or some sort of recording device or whatever. So in Krieger and the men went, "Oh no, our guy died. That looked like a problem with the ship. That sucks. Let's take our ship back to ours." Krieger being the lead of this cell, a bit like Saw Gerrera was, a little bit kind of like Luthen Rail is, where they've got their own little rebellion kind of things going on in their own ways. Krieger then got that ship in, and then the Empire found out some plans that they were doing. So the Empire set them up to do a trap, and that trap killed 30 men plus this guy Krieger, which is basically a whole cell of their own rebels. And the idea, I think, was Luthen Rail and Saw Gerrera, they had that decision of like, save some of our people or do the thing for the long game. And I think it was played up to be really important throughout the series. And then once this episode came, it was just like, oh yeah, we did that, it's fine. And you're like, wait, what? I thought we were going to see it. Especially the hollow of the guy. And I was like, oh, we're going to see Krieger, like him and these people. It's going to be like a harrowing end to watch these people and him like trying to contact Saw Gerrera or something happening. And you're like, oh, you're going to see this all happen. And you're like, oh no, it just happened off screen. And this guy Krieger that we've said this guy's name almost as many times as Andor, but we're never going to show him apart from in Hollow. So I didn't know, Dave, did you have any sort of thoughts on that element of things?
Not really. Sorry, I was just scouring at IMDb because you kept saying about Saw Gerrera, and one of the things that Chris and I sort of wind each other up about, but it's like a running theme, is that we always mention like No Retreat, No Surrender. Whatever film we're reviewing, we talk about that, and I was just finding a spurious link because you talked about Saw Gerrera there. Saw Gerrera, of course, played by Forrest Whitaker, who was in Bloodsport, which also featured Jean-Claude Van Damme, who was in the first No Retreat, No Surrender movie. So sorry, while you were having that conversation, I was just busy on an IMDb rabbit hole here.
I appreciate your honesty. It was basically just about Krieger. It was just with Krieger in itself, like, did you find the storyline with him unsatisfying because we didn't get to see him die? Do you think it was just an ample plot device to kind of show pieces? What did you think of that element?
I just think it's so, like I say, I'd have to reserve my judgment until I go back and watch it again. And then I will probably still reserve my judgment until I've seen the second season.
Yeah.
Because again, the closest thing I can draw this to, for a parallel is Game of Thrones. And that for me is a high accolade. Because there's so much going on. There's so many bits of dialogue. There's so many characters, and again, most of the movies you watch, it's fairly simple. Even series that you watch, it's fairly simple. You got a small number of primary characters, and then you got these side characters who are only there to serve the main character's plot. Whereas here, it feels like there are so many things going on, and with the cinematography as well, like I was saying about shooting sort of Mando and Obi-Wan and Kenobi in the volume, that's great from an economics point of view. But here it just feels like ordinary people living their own lives, and the camera just happens to focus on them for this short amount of time. And then it's going to focus on them for this short amount of time. But you've got this living, breathing universe. You've got all of this chaos, all of these moving parts. And so that, for me, is one of the intriguing things about it. So I hope I've successfully waffled my way out of that, but by not really having an opinion on it. But no, I just, honestly, I don't feel dissatisfied with it. I just feel like there are stories, unfinished stories all over the place. So it is the end of season 1. It's not the finish of a movie that there is never going to be a sequel to. It's just everyone. You are, with everything you see on camera, you are joining a story at a certain point, and then you're leaving the story at a certain point. You know, and some of the worst films you watch are like when everything has to be explained completely in its entirety at the start, and then there's a whole conclusion right at the end. Whereas no, it's just about, this is a small story within a massive, massive universe, and that's what it feels like now. This feels like such a bigger universe now than it did before when we just had the Skywalker saga.
If I can just piggyback on that,
go ahead.
It feels like Andor. This is a story. You know all the rest of the stuff. We will throw Easter eggs in here now and again, but they're not going to be major things. Just follow us along, and that's, they haven't held your hand. They haven't tried to explain all these little things here and there. I did watch a thing of an interview with Tony Gilroy, and originally he wanted a 5-season arc of this, and Disney came and said, no, we're not doing that. You get 2 seasons. I do wonder whether the way this has been kind of split into 3, 4 and 2, whether he will take each year, like I said, do year 1 with 3 episodes. If they do it that way, I do think, though, if Tony Gilroy, if they could, like Kevin Feige for Marvel, he should possibly oversee anything else Star Wars, because he seems to know what he's doing, and that it works. He's not trying to fan service anything. He's just trying to tell us a good story within the Star Wars universe. And as I said, if they're going to do more of that, they've got me hooked. You know, I like Star Wars, but I grew up enjoying the first films. The prequels were so. There's good moments in the last 3. Again, so, but nothing fantastic. I've watched most of Mandalorian, and I haven't actually finished it, so I apologise. I haven't seen Book of Boba Fett, but from what I've heard, it's probably not a bad thing. This is just, it's Star Wars, but it doesn't feel like Star Wars. And you know, everyone that I talked to about it, I've said, even if you do not like Star Wars, give it a go. But watch the first 3 episodes. If you're not hooked by the end of that, fair enough. But you've got to watch the first 3. And as I say, I think, you know, give me more of this, please.
I think that with Tony Gilroy, if it was him, Jon Favreau, and Dave Filoni, I think that Tony Gilroy's got the seriousness, the darkness, the mature level of Star Wars. You've got Filoni, who can tackle the more all ages stuff, and then you've got Favreau in some way to kind of balance them, because Filoni literally learned under George Lucas. When the Clone Wars was made, him and George Lucas were creating it together. So Filoni is probably, the way he came into filmmaking and the way I know he was on Avatar, The Last Airbender as well, and he's done other things. But when it comes to Star Wars with Dave Filoni, he has got most direct link to George Lucas. So he's probably got that kind of the lore hat and the weird stuff and the different things, but hasn't got potentially the degree of live action experience one needs to create content that is as high level as his animation is, because obviously high level animation is not the same. Getting CGI made is not the same as directing actors and making people feel in a universe and all these sort of things, which is why probably Boba Fett and in some degree for some people Mandalorian didn't succeed in all the ways that Clone Wars or Rebels potentially did. But Favreau's got like a lot of the movie making experience in the kind of middle. He's done quite a wide variety of stuff. So I think if the three of them work together, I think that would do a balance of the degrees of content people are yearning, which is animated, like elevated animation, live action stuff that's connected in the Mandoverse and doing all these, you know, to a degree more fan servicey things, but still trying to tell this big, cool, like almost Avengers style story, which is what it kind of feels like at the moment with Mando, Book of Boba Fett, the Ahsoka show coming out, and the few other bits and pieces that are going to be connecting. So you've got Favreau, because he obviously helped Feige start the MCU. So you've got him doing those connector pieces. You've got Filoni doing the animation in a lot of ways and a lot of the lore-heavy stuff. And you've got Gilroy doing the serious, I'd say probably the movies more than anything, apart from Taika Waititi's just like going forward. If Gilroy overlooked a lot of where the movies are going, like could you imagine having a trilogy of films that feel the same emotional weight as Rogue One, but it's not a prequel of a story we already know. It's actually three new characters. Think about when you get a character eventually dies and things, how much weight it will feel in three movies made by someone like Gilroy at the helm, or compared to someone else. I just think that he's got a vision and they've got that plan, and Andor doesn't feel like they've changed their idea halfway through like Book of Boba Fett did, which I won't spoil for you, Maff, but finish Mandalorian, it's worth it, and then or rewatch it.
Or the sequels.
Yep. Exactly. The sequels definitely did not have a plan, and they've came out and say that. So it's like, if you have the next three films, Gilroy kind of leading the charge, but then using Favreau to kind of, you know, instill a bit of Star Wars and Filoni to sprinkle Easter eggs and a bit of lore stuff in there, I think I agree with you, Matt, that could really work, because that's what this feels like. This feels like elevated Star Wars. That's what Andor does feel like. And even though there are minor critiques, there are less critiques over this entire series than in certain individual episodes of Book of Boba Fett. I have less problems I can find in this entire series than I could find in the finale Book of Boba Fett. And I liked Book of Boba Fett. I want to clarify, Math, as well. I enjoy Book of Boba Fett. I think if you're really into Star Wars and you want to just watch all the live action stuff, it's worth a watch. If you're only into Mandalorian stuff, give it a watch, but you can skip a certain amount, and I won't say what, but if anyone listening does want to do that and you're just like, I tried Book of Boba Fett, couldn't get into it, just tell me stuff about Mandalorian. I can tell you a couple of certain episodes that you'd kind of need to watch before Mandalorian Series 3 and things. But like, aside from that, I just feel like I lost my train of thought partially because I got stuck on Book of Boba Fett thinking about that. But yes, thoughts, and oh yeah, it was because of the issues of Book of Boba Fett. I really like Book of Boba Fett. I think it's worth a watch, but it was very flawed. But Andor, I think, is a lot more smooth, and it feels like a much more mature program. I don't feel like I have to keep apologizing for it. I think that's where the thing I was going. So did you have something to say, Dave?
No, I agree. I was just trying to think back. I mean, I think I was a bit of a Book of Boba Fett apologist. I enjoyed it at the time. But it was a 6 out of 10. Yeah. And it kind of made the character worse. Yeah. You know, there was this mystique about the character. And then I don't think it's the spoiler, but they suddenly switch to Mandalorian. And it's like, you've got 2 Mandalorian episodes. And they were like, it went from a 6 out of 10 to an 8 out of 10. And it was just very weird. And then it went back to Boba Fett and it was back to a 6 out of 10. It was just totally weird. But yeah, I think this is definitely different. And I think where I was talking about that kind of triangle, I mean, I think Favreau, I guess he does get a lot of praise, but for me, not enough. Because what I like about him is clearly a great director and, you know, writer and ideas guy, but I like how he respects whatever project he's in. So whether it's Marvel, whether it's Star Wars, and you see him on the kind of documentaries and behind the scenes and stuff, and he's so into it. And the volume, you know, was all the technology was there, but the way of using it and stuff, he was at the forefront in kind of designing that. So being that real innovator. But the thing that I loved, the thing that I remember most about that Mando season one behind the scenes look, it was the whole ice cream maker thing. That basically there was some guy running in the background with this like ice cream maker, and no one knew. Like it became this whole massive thing in terms of like cosplay and stuff
Without
like
looking
that.
it up, I think it's Wilro Hood. I think. I haven't looked it up. I'm going to look it up now just to check, but I think his name is Wilro Hood in Empire Strikes Back when Cloud City is getting evacuated.
Oh, wow, that is a deep, deep cut. But yeah, so people turn up to cosplay with this kind of ice cream maker thing that someone was just running in the background, and it's just on the screen for like a second. And then, Filoni and Favreau were just talking about how, we can actually make this a thing in The Mandalorian and we can bring it to the forefront and everything. It was clearly, this is the geeks inherit the earth. This is like, they are just playing in this sandpit and they love it. And it's such a refreshing change because you look at, for so many years, I mean, like, let's say pre-2000s, you had a lot of Hollywood writers who would just take these kind of materials and they would say, "Oh yeah, but the comic book writers, what do they know? We're the serious stuff." So they kind of take the main bits that they had to because they were licensed, and then they run with that. Whereas what I love about Favreau is he genuinely seems to love this stuff. So yeah, I do agree that kind of trilogy of Filoni definitely seems to be the lore geek. Favreau a little bit less, but so enthusiastic still, and in terms of the innovation and stuff, but having some adult kind of or modern day storytelling as well thrown in there as well. I think that would be a good direction for Disney to take.
I agree. I mean, Favreau made Iron Man 1, which I stand by to this day. I think is still one of the best superhero and MCU movies. It's not like, and it's got this darkness to it, and it's actually kind of in some ways a bit of a false start for the MCU in the sense that it's so dark and gritty and hard hitting. And then I love Thor, and I really like Captain America and things like that, but I found that it was much harder of a punch than a lot of the other stuff that came after, especially Iron Man 2. So, but I just still really enjoy it, just don't get me wrong. But I just want to say it was Wilro Hood is the name of the character. And for anyone on YouTube, there is a picture of him running in Empire Strikes Back. I've watched Empire many times, and I think I've caught him like once. He is genuinely so barely...
So I mean, you have to be such an uber fan to spot this guy running with this ice cream making machine. And people did it, and like there was so much footage of these people with this ice cream making machine, and the fact that they turned it into a thing in Mandalorian, just brilliant. For me, that is one of the best aspects of fandom.
Agreed. It's amazing. So with Andor, we'll continue with the sort of the positives then. So we've done some critiquing of the show and kind of negatives, but let's delve right back into the positives and talk about this episode more. So we also got the riot, which happened, and then we've got some of the things that Marvel was saying. But there's one little weird scene that I want to mention, which was Cyril and Sergeant Mosk on the bus, and at one point they swap hats, and it only happens. It's about 20 seconds on screen, but they're both sat on the bus waiting to go to Ferrix, and they both look at each other. They both basically. Cyril's got a blue hat on and Mosk's got an orange hat, and they believe that probably the hats will match their respective outfits, and they just look at each other, and then Mosk offers the hat and they just swap hats. And then do you guys remember this scene happening?
Yeah.
Dave doesn't at all. Dave thinks I'm making it up.
That completely went over my head, sorry.
I think it's because Cyril is dressed in a little bit like the uniform that he was working, and so that he doesn't stand out. When they swap hats over, I think it's so that he looks like he's more that he's been unfair because you just pressed his name and I forgot.
Cyril Khan or Sergeant Mosk?
Sergeant Mosk. Sergeant Mosk, I think, has been there for a while. So maybe it's a case of, look, you wear this, you'll blend in a little bit more. Again, it's one of those silly little things that happens so quickly, and you think, what? But it was like, just as they both kind of pass over at the same time, and not a word said, they put it on and carry on about the business.
Yeah, you could almost blink and you miss it. I just wanted to point out that part because I thought that was just really cool. But the speech itself. So obviously, I mentioned about Nemec's speech earlier on with the manifesto and things, which is really cool. But when Marva gave that speech, and it was just very powerful, and she kept saying, "We've been sleeping," and it's just like that. It's so powerful. And obviously, I think that Andor's done very cleverly is the level of social commentary that it is used and how it can be applicable for so many things, while it not being too heavy-handed with things, or still keeping in the realm of Star Wars, being like, the Empire's bad, that sort of idea. But just her saying, for ages, right until the end, she doesn't even say the words the Empire, she just says them. And she specifically, I think in the writing again, it's meant to be, you can basically use a speech, apart from the last couple lines, this entire speech for almost anything about oppression. And it links with what Nemec was saying earlier, which is oppression is the face of fear. And it's like both of their speeches put together is just incredible. And I would love them to release Nemec's manifesto as a real book or something like that. I'd love to read it, just the ideas. I know it's basically, in a lot of ways, a degree of communist literature, but in the realm of Star Wars and someone who's been living in the Empire and seeing how that would kind of come out in certain ways, I would be very intrigued to know just the kind of things that were said there. So with Marva's speech in itself, we've been sleeping, fight the Empire. What did you both think? I'll start with Maff first this time.
Well, with Nemec's manifesto, at first I was thinking, I wish they'd have done more with it through the series. Once he took that, I wish there'd have been a bit more. But the way they used it now, it hit harder. Mm-hmm. So, again, I'm glad they didn't. Obviously, it just, again, a lot like the speech in the prison, where it builds and it builds and it builds. Mm-hmm. Again, Luthen's speech when he met the spy, again, it built and built, but this one did the same. And you could see the look of fear on the Empire's face. Mm-hmm. You could see that it was hitting home with all the people. There was, as there was marching up, and there was heading towards where I think it was the Death Troopers, wasn't it? Who was barricading them. Yeah. It gave me then feels of Gangs of New York, when both gangs are coming close to kind of meet off with each other. And then we get this speech, and it just, anyone who wasn't a believer beforehand was at the end of that. And it was so heartfelt. And there's a scene with Luthen where he's listening and he's thinking, I wish she was still alive, kind of thing. She would be the person who I would send out there in public to kind of get more people involved. And Luthen's way of doing things is very much, so far as we've seen, is a bit of bloodshed. Mm-hmm. This wasn't. This was just words to kind of convince people to rise up and not take this anymore. And all it takes is that one set of group to come and start doing this and to show that we can fight back. And that I knew something was going to happen because there is William Pack, who his dad got killed by the ISB. And that when they interrogated him, you see him building the bomb. Yeah, you knew something was going to build. You knew something was going to happen again. Again, a dark side of the rebels, because we saw that in episode 2, I think, with the car bomb. It's not a great way of doing things, but it set up with that spark that set off the riot, that set off. But as I say, her speech was just outstanding. And you can understand why, although there's been lots of things that have been setting off this rebel alliance already, this has been the spark. This has been the thing that's kind of going to get everybody to stand up and realise And it was just, again, it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Dave, I'll ask you for your thoughts on that part as well, but I want to just chime in and add that what I liked as well is I kind of noticed this on the second watch, because I watched it once yesterday because Megan was super tired, so I watched it and when she went to bed, and then I watched it again with her today over dinner. And one part I specifically noticed was the bomb set off, obviously, chain reaction. So the bomb initially goes off, and then several more fall after. And I thought that looked amazing, all the smoke and everything. And it really felt it. Like Megan let out like an audible noise. She's like, "Oh my!" Like, when that sort of stuff's happening, and the glass is exploding, and people were like taking cover and whatnot. You really felt like the explosions meant something. But it's like that's the chain reaction, and that's I think what Andor and Rogue One, the kind of theme of rebellion is how you fight oppression. It's what Nemec's manifesto was saying. It's what Marvel was saying. It's like we've been letting these little things go. We all need to rise up. We all need to go. And it's these set of events. And that's what happens. That's how the rebels beat the Empire. There's a few. It's mainly the movies. It's the big events that happen in the movies. Is the events lead up. There's some stuff in the middle, made from the comics, some Legends content, some canon content, but the bulk things are destroying the Death Star 1 and destroying the Death Star 2. And those change the war. And they all only really happen because of these slim chances happening of this happening or that happening. And, 1,000,000 to 1 odds and those sort of things. That's how the rebellion kind of wins, is doing all these things. That's how Aldani, kind of the heist, did that. All of these elements. And I found that it married together so well visually, with the explosions literally going off, but also what was being said in the context of these speeches. So, Dave, what do you kind of think of the speeches in themselves, and that more into Marva's stuff?
Again, fantastic, brilliant writing, and it does. I think that the thing that elevates this more from all the other Star Wars series that we've seen is that it does leave you with those thoughts afterwards, and so. You kind of think of, and again, I said this earlier this week to you, but it elevates the prequels for me, because you've got this idea of the Senate, and you've got all the kind of negative things that happen in that setup. Well, then you have an empire, and you have all this oppression, and that's not perfect either. So no one is offering an answer. No one is actually saying, well, actually, this other thing. It's kind of like V from Vendetta.
Yeah.
That, he's not actually offering an answer. He's just saying, this is wrong. Mm-hmm. We need to evolve from this point here. And I think, again, that's kind of what Andor explores quite well, because, again, you watch the original Star Wars, and it's very, very clear. Before was great, Luke. Before the dark times, before the Empire, because it was all hunky dory then. Well, actually, no, it wasn't. My mind wanders to the Mitchell and Webb scene, which is, are we the baddies? Because we've got skulls on our heads, and these guys are. We're the Death Troopers. We're kind of, are we the baddies? But they're great, aren't they, the Death Troopers? But no, I think without being heavy-handed, it does explore that whole idea about what is right and wrong. Because you look at Denise Goff's character, Dedra Meero. She believes she's on the side of the righteous. She is trying to hunt down these terrorists.
Same as Cyril.
She is absolutely in the right, and Cyril as well. They are both fighting these terrorists, and they think they're in the right. Whereas you got these people fighting oppression, and they think they're in the right. And so that is just what I love. And obviously my heart goes to the rebellion, and so, I'm pissed in the air, kind of pumping when everything goes off and all the explosions go off and everything. And, the people are actually rising up, they're waking from their slumber and, being kicked into action. But what I like about it is I can empathize that the other side are thinking they're in the right as well. and they're like, they're trying to quell this down, and they don't realize themselves they're being manipulated. But again, what are we saying? Are we saying there is a right way and there is a right way to govern society? I don't think we've found it yet. So I kind of like how it puts all the questions out there without necessarily, in a heavy-handed way, saying this is the answer, this is the right way to do it.
And linking in with that, it's one line that I wrote down, which is when Dedra was questioning to Partagaz, and she was going, why have you done this? Why have you just killed Krieger? Why did you kill... There's 31 people. We can't get information from them. And they said, we're wiping the taste of Aldani out of the Emperor's mouth. And it's like, oh, so it's literally basically going, look, we know this is not the right way forward, but the Emperor is the Emperor. And the higher up you go, the more you realize how much real power the Emperor has. That's kind of like when you're down at grunt level, no stormtroopers know the Emperor is a Sith Lord and can shoot lightning out of his fingers. So few people have any idea of either the concept of that, let alone that the Emperor is. He's Palpatine. In Rebels, you see the kind of broadcasts he lets out of him trying to be this nice, good, calm Emperor who's doing the best for the galaxy. He doesn't ever break that facade to the general public, but kind of mirroring, oddly enough, I think Scientology in some ways, the higher up you go in the hierarchy, the more you get to kind of see what's really going on at the top, what's really going on behind what kind of started all this and that sort of thing. And I think that his kind of thing with Partagaz is basically being like, look, don't push this anymore. He probably knows a little bit. Admiral Yularen, who was seen in one of the prior episodes, who's like Partagaz's superior, he's a friend of Palpatine's. He's like a major person in the Clone Wars and then in the Empire. He's seen in A New Hope. He hasn't got any speaking roles, but he dies on the Death Star. He's a very good mustache, so you'll recognize him as a dude with a big, nice white mustache in the room where Tarkin is and stuff like that, I seem to recall. And so he knows what the Emperor is actually capable of, I believe. I'm pretty sure Yularen actually knows, or probably has some suspicions. He's got some strange powers and things like that. But few people knew him to be a Sith Lord and all this kind of other stuff. But he has got this power. And obviously there's Darth Vader, the Enforcer, who can just go around and choke people at will, which I hope they don't really bring into Andor Series 2. I'd like it to keep removed from Darth Vader being in everything, but I have a suspicion they won't be able to resist, and it'll be a big thing, and then I'll be like, I don't want it, and then I'll see it, and I'll be like, the hallway scene in Rogue One, and be like,
this is the best
one of the best thing ever.
It's that thing. I would talk to someone and they said, I just wish we had lightsabers. And I said, I really don't want lightsabers. In season 2, which we may get to kind of have predictions for there's something I would like to see in season 2. But the fact that other than the space lightsabers, I like the fact that it's been very down to earth, which makes it a little bit more relatable.
Yes.
Which is, with Dedra, there is fan theory that she is Cassian's sister. I think Jack's mentioned it on the first episode. I don't know, because there is that point where when Cassian's in the bar, and that they said that she'd been in their books, then she'd gone, which it could easily be set up by Dedra and that, but still. But she doesn't want to kill Andor, and she didn't want to kill anyone, or she questioned why they've killed anyone. She wants to question everything. She wants to know why things are happening the way they are. In that, you see how shaken she is at the end of this when Solo saves her, and that, and that fear on her face of it shouldn't have gone down like this, and that. Now, whether that's enough that maybe she will come across to the rebels, I'm not sure. I kind of hope that they don't do that. I hope that they carry her on, and that, because technically at the moment, is it just classed as the ISB or is it classed as the Empire? Because I know we keep saying it's the Empire because it's the easiest way to describe it. But
the ISB is a part of the Empire. It's a part of government. Right. It's the Imperial Security Bureau. So it's almost like there's like the people who check in the police, like the FBI. It's basically like that's how I interpret it.
I think of it like the SS. You know, for the Nazis. So that's how I sort of think
MI5 almost maybe sort of. For us.
You've got different. Like the Empire is just a massive organization, isn't it? But you've got all these little silos, all these tiny little organizations, and they don't speak to each other. They don't work in a unison. Now, if you're the oppressed, it feels like they are, but it is this massive thing with multiple moving parts. And again, I think you don't really get that from the movies, but I think Andor is the first thing where you really feel that.
Yeah. Because Cyril's basically like with the local police force in a way, and that's where he is. So he's like a part of a local council, which is if you work for your local council in England, you are a part of your government, but you're not working for the same thing. It's not the same thing as working in the Houses of Parliament. They're two very separate ideas. So it's kind of like that. And in America, it'd be like, you know, working with someone for the state compared to working for someone for the entirety of America. I think the federal level. So it's that kind of idea to kind of put it to other analogies and things. But yeah, it is definitely very interesting seeing the different parts of it, because you see it, once again, talking about Rebels. Anyone who hasn't seen Rebels, who's been watching Andor and you haven't watched Rebels, just go watch Rebels, because so many of the things you like about Andor are in Rebels, and there are lightsabers as well. But that's not the focal point, okay? But it is amazing. There's so many other parts of the Empire you get to see. You get to see Imperial training, like how they treat cadets and people going into the Empire at a young age. You get to see all that sort of stuff. So go watch it, everyone. But yes, I agree. I think this show has done so many things so well, and I'm so excited for series 2. But as Dave kind of said, I'm not like with Mandalorian. I was just like on a high almost at the end of it. I won't spoil it, Maff, but it's just like there's a part where things kind of, you're like desperate for the next one. Where can we go from here? Partly, I think, because of sort of character recognition in some ways, but also we don't know. Mandalorian is open-ended. We don't know how it's going to go, whereas, you know, with Andor we kind of do. But I'm thrilled because I want this to do really well, and I hope them putting it on TV and things, I hope them doing that is going to bring more people to watch it. I think more people need to give this a go. And I think that if this can get the numbers behind it, I'm hopeful that Disney, and by proxy Lucasfilm, will then be like, this is what the more kind of things we need. Because I think if we get a show like this, as well as a show like Mandalorian and an animated show and that sort of thing, everyone doesn't have to watch every show. I will. But then it just means we've kind of got this buffet of things to watch. And I just don't want to happen to what has been accused the MCU have done a little bit, but I think they've steered away from that in the recent phase, is too many similar things. Like, I love dudes with lightsabers being cool, but like, how many stories can you tell in the Imperial era where there are basically no Jedi, and we know that the only person hunting Jedi or people is Vader and the Inquisitors, and you know if Vader pops up, he's not going to die. So it's just this whole era of Star Wars where you've got like anything with lightsabers and Jedi, it doesn't really fit. So it's like, explore new places, have new themes, have darker, if we're going to have these human stories, it's nice not having someone with a lightsaber, because then if you're against 10 people, it actually is like, imagine if you're in real life with a gun against 10 people, you're not going to live, or in theory, you're not going to unless you're in an action movie. Whereas if you're a dude with a lightsaber that deflects all blasters and you've got force powers, you're like, 10 people, pfft, easy peasy, no worries at all. 100 people, maybe that would give Luke Skywalker a little bit of a problem. You know, it's things like that, which I really appreciate.
That's what's good though, because the scenes in there where you've got Cassian or Mon Mothma, you know that they're not going to die. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why the other scenes with all these other characters that we don't know about, they mean so much. You know, Game of Thrones, one of the good things about that first season, people were getting killed left, right, and centre, and there were people you did not expect to die. Mm-hmm. You know, this again, it has that ability to be able to kill people off if it needs to, or at least take them out, because we know where two of the characters are going to go, but everyone else is fair game. Mm-hmm. Which then you're not watching something where you think, well, okay, but we know Vader's not going to die. We know, Luke Skywalker's not going to die. This is, to a certain degree, you don't know where people are going to go. When Nemec died, and that was hard hitting, and it was a character that we only knew for such a short time, and it's nice that they can do that. Season 2, hopefully they can carry that along. I have confidence that they will. There's things that I would like to see in season 2, but as I say, to a certain degree, all bets are off to most of the characters in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Apart from like 2 or 3, all the other ones, you're kind of like, what is going to happen with these? And one thing I want to highlight as well as a character I really liked in this episode in particular, which is Brasso, which is Andor's mate from like episode 1, and he's just like a really nice person. He was there for Marva, and he like him and Andor hugged, and he was there for B2 Emo, and he knows Bix and all these things. So I really liked that. I really liked the fact that Andor saved Bix. I was worried it was going to be one of those things that he spends all that time getting to her, and then as they're leaving, gets like shot or something. I was worried that was going to happen. I did find that he just kind of escaped really easily. I find that he was like, I'm going to break in and save Bix. And I know that all the riot was happening, so I get it. But it was just like, yep, I killed this one officer, got Bix. We all got out completely fine, got to the shipyard, flew away. And it was like, what? Andor struggled the least out of anyone in this entire episode. Everyone else went through like hell. And Andor was like, yeah, I know it just got out of prison, to be fair to him, but it was a bit, I was just like, oh,
it's
that was
like
easy.
He had a hood on when he first appeared, and then after that, oh, we don't need this, guys. Everyone's looking for you.
The whole thing, as you say, yeah. The whole reason everyone's there is Andor, and he's like, yeah, you're just wandering around behind.
Yeah, put a hat on, do something, fake moustache or something like that. That is, again, throughout the season, I would say Andor's probably the least exciting part about it. Is all the other characters, all the other things that are in there. He is that means to an end to just to get you from one place to another.
He's like a vessel, a plot vessel.
And that, which, I'm not taking anything against Diego Luna. He's fantastic in it, and he does well with what he has to do, but he is a bit like a background character to everything else that's going on.
Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it. What do you think about that sort of element, Dave? Andor as a character?
I think it's just a vehicle to latch onto, I think. I don't think they're completely oblivious to the fact that a lot of people, including myself, have said that, Rogue One was the best thing that Disney have released. And I think they've found an interesting angle where they're not throwing the rebellion down our throats, but they're kind of latching onto this character, but they're letting us explore this wider world. And now, so I've said this in a work context multiple times today, so I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I'm not on the podcast format. When you open the door and you walk into a room, you don't necessarily know what other doors are going to be open to you. And I feel like that's what Andor is. It's open the door to another room. Now, we could latch on to so many other characters that have been in this series, and we could follow them. Like I say, it feels like all of these people have their own lives. They just happen to walk by the camera for a bit. That's what it feels like. So I just think that, like I say, more than any other series, it feels like it's made the world bigger. And, we get to explore that world right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There is one other thing I would like to, another scene that I really enjoyed when Andor did come back to Ferrix is when he came across the stone that I'm assuming his foster father was, Clem.
Yeah.
And I think it read on there that the person who sees everything isn't cursed, he is blessed, or something along those lines. And then you see that little scene of him there, repairing whatever it is that's just rusted up, and he's saying, "Look, you don't have to get something new every time. You can, repair and fix what was broken," which, is a thing that kind of goes through this entire episode. The fact that, we can fix what we believe is broken by just a bit of care. And again, it was nice just for him to call back to his dad. I don't know if anyone else has thought on that.
Yeah, I agree completely. And linking in with that, I wonder if that's foreshadowing for him fixing B2 Emo into K2SO.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But yeah, I loved that scene. And I also will mention I loved the idea of the brick of someone being cremated and being turned into a brick. I think that's really cool. And then when Brasso's there using Marva's brick to literally smacking people around the head with it, I was like, that's actually really badass. Like beating people with a brick made from like a revolutionary's body. I was like, that's very cool. Fairly disrespectful, I think, maybe, but it was very cool.
I don't think she'd mind.
No, I think she'd be well up for it. What were you, Dave?
No, I was just thinking I'd like to be made into a missile and fire me at the fucking Houses of Parliament, to be honest. So, no, I'm all for it.
Dave's opinions are not what we all believe in.
Yeah.
So we will begin to wrap up here. But just before we do, I would like to find out for the future. We've kind of each said a little bit of what we want. What do we want, A, from Luthen Rail? And then B, what do you also want from the rest of the show as a whole? Maff, I know you had some cool ideas, so we'll go to Dave first, and I've already kind of said mine, and then we'll finish off with you. So Dave, any ideas for the rest of the show, and also what your thoughts on Luthen Rail as well, and his kind of end with Andor?
Luthen Rail, which one's that again?
Stellan Skarsgård.
Yeah. So I don't know, it feels to me like he's more of an enabler to Mon Mothma. I mean, he's got to go out in a blaze of glory, hasn't he? Or else he'd be there in the first movie.
Yep.
So Mon Mothma has to carry the torch, but he is absolutely a badass. And I didn't necessarily expect him to be. I thought he was just going to be, one piece of the puzzle. But like I say, that whole point where he was doing the whole slingshot thing and got away, I was like, you are a fucking bit of a dark horse there. So yeah, I think in the second season he's got to go out in a blaze of glory there. But predictions, I mean, for the second season,
or
I don't know.
What you want either, not even predictions, but anything you'd kind of...
Yeah, what I want to see more Denise Goff. I honestly, unashamedly fancy the pants off her. So yeah, definitely want to see more of her. Cyril as well. I kind of want to see more of him. He is Arnold Rimmer from Red Dwarf. 100%.
I love that
He
show.
is absolutely that character in the Star Wars universe. Like, you couldn't, the whole, his mannerisms, the way he's a bit shit, and the way he kind of worships the kind of empire and the hierarchy and everything. I want to see more of him, and I want to see his journey, because it didn't really feel satisfying, And there was a little bit of a weird bit. I thought the way she reacted to being rescued, I didn't 100% like the acting. It felt like a bit tropey, like she was almost attracted to him in that moment, and. No, you'd be fucking shitting yourself. You'd just nearly been decimated. You'd nearly been killed by a mob. So yeah, I thought that was a bit weird, but no, I think more than anything though, I want to see Andor do some nefarious shit, because he said that in Rogue One. He's done things, and we've seen him do things that aren't great, but you could justify all of them pretty much. I mean, there was episode 1, wasn't there, where he killed those guys, and you're like, oh shit, this is different. This is something we haven't seen before. Someone a bit great. Well, we did see it in the original Star Wars, and then they changed it, but with Han Solo. But anyway, getting over that, I want to see him do some really bad stuff, but it be justified. And,
greater good stuff like Saw Gerrera and Luthen Rail, their kind of idea of letting all those people die
yeah,
the
make
asset.
some really hard choices where you're like, you question yourself. You're like, oh shit.
But when he shoots
You know,
that
like
guy with a bad arm,
yeah, like
start
the
Rogue
guy who
One.
gets stabbed, and you're like, oh yeah, fucking give it to him. Oh shit, I feel bad about myself because I've just wanted to see that guy get stabbed. So I want to see that moral ambiguity more than anything. But no, like I say, even though the end of the season doesn't make me chomping at, it doesn't make me really thirsting for the second season. I'm more academically really intrigued. When it comes, I'll be so excited because this has been brilliant. I just think it, like I say, for me, it's exploded the universe. It's almost given you an infinite number of stories to tell because you could pick anyone in this universe from any part of the galaxy and you could pick them up and start telling that story.
I agree. And just before I ask you, Matt, for your thoughts on that, I will just say a very quick comparison, which I just thought of, which is for me, I think Andor for Disney Plus era Star Wars, for me, is equating to what the Batman with Robert Pattinson is to the DC universe. Because if you think about it with the DC universe, there's been a lot of content released. There's been some people more so loved this one, some people less so loved that one. This one, a lot of people really didn't like. This one, only like super fans liked. Like DC at the moment, especially with movies, are a bit up and down with their releases. There's things like Doom Patrol and like animated shows that people, like the Harley Quinn one, and people are going like, this is some of the best DC content, but it's animated. That's something that obviously Star Wars has in common. And I've just kind of made the connection that Andor and The Batman with Pattinson are the two most mature pieces of content we've had so far. They're both telling stories about characters that we've kind of know a bit before about, but because of this new director and this new showrunner putting their kind of stamp on it and making a film or a product for some more mature audiences, when it comes out, the vast majority of people hail it because it's something we've all been kind of wanting without some of the weird silliness that both Star Wars and DC can sometimes get associated with, like Jar Jar in the prequels and like some of the stuff in Batman and Robin or Batman Forever.
The only slight point I'd maybe disagree with a little bit
Please
is
do.
so with Batman, for almost my whole adult life, we've got a darker and grittier Batman. So it's almost been a linear thing. So in the 60s, Adam West, and I love it, the groovy kind of Adam West Batman. And it was all very, yeah, exactly. Pam, pow. And then in 1989, Tim Burton released Batman, and they did a brilliant, nowadays you would call it viral marketing. It was brilliant. They just put all these posters on. All they had to do was put up the Batman symbol everywhere, and everyone was going nuts for it. And when it came out, everyone was like, holy shit, this is a darker and grittier Batman. You look back at it now, it's like, yeah, still pretty campy. And then they released like Batman Returns, and they had the Penguin biting people's noses off and stuff, and you're like, oh shit, this has gone darker and grittier again. And then it got a bit campy again, and there were a couple of movies after that, but then it went Batman Begins. Batman Begins. And then it was proper grounded, but it was more darker, grittier Batman. And then it went to Dark Knight, darker and grittier Batman. Okay, Dark Knight Returns. Yeah, bit of a misstep there. So you know what I mean? It's almost, you could plot a chart, and although it's not completely linear, almost every iteration has been a darker and grittier Batman. This is not just a darker and grittier Star Wars universe. This is more nuanced. This is better storytelling. This is challenging the things that you think you know about the Empire, the things you think you know about the Rebellion. It's just not Rebellion is 100% good, the Empire is 100% bad. This is so much more cleverer than that. And so that's the only reason why I sort of disagree with the parallel, that for me, the Batman thing was linear. This explodes it. This for me should bring in people who want to tell, proper stories, like really meaningful stories. And then, good writers can think, all right, I can actually do this, and I can do this in the Star Wars universe as well.
Very well point. Very, very well made point. And I think Acolyte might actually tick those boxes. But Maff, tell us everything. We've just spoken about a lot of stuff. So any thoughts on the Batman analogy, and then let us know sort of your predictions and whatnot, what you want to see from Andor going forward.
I do not want to see Andor with Andor nipples, and that we're not having that. No. What I would like to see, I would like to see Luthen. I think Luthen will take Andor to meet Saw. And I think he'll leave him there because that's another. It's like a chess board for Luthen. This is. So I think he'll send him there. I hope Luthen gets his kind of blaze of glory by helping Mon Mothma. I think that would be a good way for him to. Because if he doesn't, why was he not in Rogue One? And that, so he must go out at some point. I think it would be fitting for all the shit that he's put Mon Mothma through to kind of get her away or get her daughter away or something along that lines. I would like to see, is it Cal Kestis? He's from the game.
Cal Kestis, yeah.
Cal Kestis. Because I know he's around the time, because he meets Saw Gerrera at one point in the game. So I think I would like to see him just to kind of make an appearance. So then maybe someone else could take that and make a film of that. I know that maybe they want to just keep it for the games, but it would be a nice thing.
They are doing a book as well. There's a tie-in book coming out early next year. So there's going to be 3 pieces of Cal Kestis content, 2 games and a book. So a lot of people are hoping, because they use the model of the Cal Kestis, the actor who plays him, who's in Gotham, funny enough, not the Batman connection. He looks the same as the character. So there's a lot of people, like Star Wars have posted like the guy who plays him, or whose name escapes me, being at like Galaxy's Edge, and now his lightsaber's available from the shops and things. And it's like, I know you've got a game coming out, but you've done the model the same, so maybe we could get a film or a live appearance of him just to be like a cameo. I'd love that.
It would be fitting. And that. I echo what Dave says. I want to see Cassian do something dark, and that he's talked about his dark past. Sounds like Dexter there. In Rogue One, so they've got to do something there to kind of give him that line. I would like to see Saw Gerrera's accident, and that, because at the moment he's whole, and that when we meet him further down the line, he's not. So again, it's another time where they can just kind of finish that a little bit off. Maybe that's something where Cassian has to make a decision and leave Saw behind, or he's responsible for that. I'm not sure. There's a name that I keep hearing about. You're going to tell me straight away who he is. It's Thrawn. General Admiral Thrawn. Lots of people keep mentioning his name. Now, from what I believe, he's a major part of Rebels. So
well, he was a major part of Legends. He was in the Heir to the Empire trilogy, which was basically the Star Wars sequel trilogy in book form, but as in, it's nothing to do with the modern sequel trilogy, but it was like the first big part of Star Wars content that people really latched onto aside from the movies. They're like comics and a few other bits and pieces, but those books featured Thrawn, and then there was more books about him and his life, and then in the canon he appears in Rebels. He's an antagonist for that, and also there's 6 books about him as well. He is, and he obviously gets mentioned in you may not have got this far, but he gets name dropped in Mandalorian at some point,
right?
So he's going to become
spoiler.
I don't know if that counts as a spoiler, because Maff doesn't even know who Thrawn is, and he's just heard the name thrown around.
I've seen an image of him, and I know he's blue.
Well, you mentioned
to be a bit of a bad guy, so
he's a very interesting character, and he was the main villain in this Heir to the Empire trilogy. So there's a lot of rumors thinking that the Mandoverse, in a way, is going to be a soft retelling of those books, but with live action series. But also, you mentioned about Saw Gerrera. Parts of Saw Gerrera and what happened to him are in Star Wars Rebels.
Oh, right, okay.
Everything people watch where they're like, I love this part of Andor, I want more of it. It
Go watch Rebels.
exists. It's in Rebels. I keep telling you, there's whole like arcs all about Rogue One. Literally about it's like,
Just an idea that's just sprung to me now.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do a little side project here and
What?
do a little bit of a walkthrough. So I know it's already released, but you know, like season's greetings, like Tony and Jax do.
well, Rebels, yeah.
We could do that with Rebels. So the people who don't necessarily want to sit down and watch a cartoon, you know, we could podcast about it and chat about it. I would definitely want, because I binged it. So I was like back to back, and I'm sure there were things that I was missing, and definitely as things in Andor are being picked up, like I'm like, oh shit, I'm sure I should know this person. Just a thought for the future.
How child friendly is it?
Completely. It's
Right.
it's 7 plus, I think.
100%.
Oh,
Se-
so I
7
can get my
plus.
3-year-old to watch it.
Yeah, I think there's probably only.
Clone Wars film.
Oh god, oof! I wouldn't watch that.
Don't watch it. Right,
No,
it's very, very
okay.
child friendly, but
The,
it's
the,
totally
the
shit.
fact that you're laughing kind of took me
Yeah.
off.
Oh, it's very, very child friendly, but you will blow your brains out probably.
It's not great, but the Clone Wars series I'd say is less child friendly because there's certain scenes that like you have full on war crimes happen in that series, and there's some pretty gruesome deaths. I'd say with Rebels, it's all suitable. I mean, it's all PG. I think if you buy it on home release, that's what it counts as. So it's all for 7 plus.
He likes watching the Hulk, so I'm assuming it's probably along the same lines. So
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's no gore or anything like that. There's some not happy episodes, but that's part of the story.
I don't
to be
think you'd
honest-
pick up on that though as a kid. Like a
Not
lot
that
of
young.
things, certainly like the political things, you wouldn't pick up on.
No.
He's loved Halloween, so everything is like vampires, ghosts, and all. He's just
All right, not the 1970 whatever
no.
Halloween.
we're good parents.
I will say with Rebels, I mean, I was actually trying to find a reason to watch Rebels again because Megan's only seen them once. I've only seen it all twice, and you know, it's a big thing to put on the shoulders, really. And there's 77 episodes, I think, in total, or thereabouts. The first season is 14 episodes, and then the subsequent series like 22 episodes. But each episode's only like 20 minutes long,
Right.
and there's 4 seasons. Actually, series 4 is 15 episodes, so it's 15, 22, 22, and 14. So it's like 44 plus 39. Yeah. So it's actually about 73 odd episodes because there's a few specials on here that are tiny. So yeah, like a 70 something episodes that are 20 minutes long. And I always want an excuse to do it. And also there's a series coming out called Ahsoka, and that's going to link in with Rebels for certain reasons that I won't say for spoilers. But I would love to do something like that. But I wouldn't be able to do it every month, but because there's only 4 seasons, you could just be like, well, we'll do it every 2 months or thereabouts. Just be like every other month we'll do 1 episode, and that one episode of Season's Greetings, that sort of thing, or we'll call it something else. And that will be 1 season of Rebels. And then that means it'll be quite easy to digest because then it means it's only 1 every few days if needs be. I mean, season 1 we could do quite easily, but we'll definitely figure that out. For 2023, I would love to do that because any excuse to watch Rebels, it's my favorite piece of Star Wars content. I fucking love talking about it, and I don't get enough of an opportunity to because I don't want to just spend an entire episode going into the deep lore of Rebels or spoiling it for anyone. So that would be a really good opportunity because there are so many elements I want to talk about of Rebels. What have
I
you done?
think having Maff, you know, having never watched it,
Yep.
having you, the ultimate guru, and I'm somewhere in the middle, having those 3 points, walking through Rebels, I think will be a wonderful thing.
And also, it'd be great to thank Maff as well, because obviously you've helped so much with Andor and got into like been so helpful with this Andor discussion show. I'd be like, you can be with the trifecta of a co-host movement, and we can even like it could just be the 3 of us, or if someone wanted to chime in for a specific thing, they could send in their thoughts or whatever. But we would love that'd be great. In 2023, we can figure that out. That'd be.
I can get on that. I mean, the episode I did with Dan, and he kept saying, "Oh, this is Matt's show," and I'm thinking, will you be quiet? I'm never going to get invited back again. And then, I didn't do anything to Jax, by the way, in case anyone's worried.
He's going to start popping up as season's greetings and indie comic spotlight. He's become a pop gorilla.
There's so many 70s cult movies that start like this. It's like, I don't know what happened to him.
I'm just thinking talented Mr. Ripley. That's what.
But no, I'll get on that. I'll try to get George into watching it. He was actually playing around with a lightsaber earlier on today.
Well, you have to pause now, because if we're going to do it in 2023, you've got to keep yourself fresh, so you can't be watching ahead.
Oh, well, he can watch it. I suppose he could watch the first season, but it depends how quickly he'd watch through them, really.
Yeah.
But you can see, I mean, there's also the first 2 episodes of Rebels is like it's called Spark of the Resistance, I think. No, Spark of the Rebellion. Yeah, I can't remember the exact episode names, but it's the first 2 episodes is like a special. So it's like you watch it in one go, so it's like a 45-minute thing. So you could always test the water with that. With him if you so desired. But yeah, give it a little bit of time. Nearer Christmas, when there's time off at Christmas, when
I don't have time off. I'm self-employed.
Well, when people perceive they're having more time and things. But yeah, we'll definitely.
I'm sure I did hear recently. I think you dragged Tonya into Rebels as well. So.
I did.
Yeah.
And she thanked me for it as well. She said because of I got her to watch Rebels.
Great storytelling. So
it's one of those things. It's quite hard for me as a Star Wars fan. Everyone knows me because obviously I've got Star Wars tattoos, and I'm a massive Star Wars fan and an apologist, and I enjoy all Star Wars content. When I tell people, "No, Rebels is amazing," they go, "Yeah, but you like all Star Wars." It's like, no, yes, I do, but I don't recommend Clone Wars to everyone. I'd say there are certain arcs of Clone Wars that I think people need to see because they're phenomenal. But I personally think you can watch Rebels. And if you like Rebels, then you can get into Clone Wars. I think Rebels is better and easier to get into than Clone Wars is. And I think the Rebels is much like Andor. It just gets better and better and better and better and better. Whereas Clone Wars is like, phenomenal arc. And then 4 episodes of nonsense. And then 2 episodes that are really interesting and go into the deep ideas of the Force. And then here's a silly 3 episodes of Jar Jar. And you're like, what is happening? And then the next episode's like, here's a war crime and basically genocide. And you're like, I'm sorry, what? And it goes, oh, but R2-D2 gets stranded on a moon with 3PO and it's all silly. And you're like, where is the tone of this? What's happening?
Can I ask, have you ever recommended the Ewok movie to anyone?
I've not seen either of them. I've seen bits and pieces of them, but I've not seen them. He calls himself
a Star Wars fan.
I honestly, I want to make Mike watch that. I also want to make Chris Phelps watch that. Being at the height of my Star Wars fandom, I got those movies out, and as a kid, still thought they were shit. So I need to rewatch them.
So that could be.
When's my pick for VHS?
Well, what we could do, we could tie it in. We could do a tie-in. What we could do is do our thing with Rebels that we want to, like some of the best Star Wars content that's underrated, and then we can go to some of the worst Star Wars content that people haven't seen, and it could be like a Christmas special. Because if we do our season's greetings-esque thing every couple of months, this time next year for the Christmas special for 2023, after we've done Rebels all together, some of the pinnacle of Star Wars content, we could then maybe do the holiday special and the 2 Ewok movies, because I've been wanting to watch them for a long time and getting an excuse. If I can get Megan to watch them as well, Megan and Chris, because Megan and Chris agree on everything. They listen to the Fly episode. Both of their opinions on the Fly identical. Yeah. It's hilarious. There's so many films they're just exactly the same. So that would be a really fun thing to do as well this time next year. But you guys can obviously watch those films before that. I'm not trying to put an embargo. No one can watch Ewoks until I do.
Yeah.
Can I just ask one thing?
Yeah.
It's been mentioned around the internet about, do you think this should be up for an Emmy? Or even Andy Serkis's performance? Do you think it should get an award, the series?
I think Andy Serkis should get nominated as Best Supporting Actor. I don't know what the other nominations would be. I think he definitely should be acknowledged. I think the series as a whole, musically, I think it should definitely get a music nomination. I think cinematography-wise, and that I agree as well. When it comes to acting, Diego Luna did a great job, but he's basically the lead, even though I would not nominate him for Best Lead Actor. Mon Mothma, Genevieve O'Reilly, who plays her, fantastic. But I think that Stellan Skarsgård is probably the person who's shown the best acting prowess across the whole series. I think Mon Mothma, Genevieve O'Reilly, has done a fantastic job. There's certain facial expressions and things, and the subtleties. She's like very subtle with her acting in a brilliant way because that's the character. Whereas Stellan is like off the rails at points. He's like two personalities, and then he's got that, you know, the controlled thing, and then when he talks to Lonnie and he's like yelling at him and stuff, saying everything he's lost. So I think for me, if it was acting, Stellan or Genevieve O'Reilly, and then I think music choice definitely, and cinematography. I think story, I think the writing, yes. Yeah. The stories I think are brilliant, and I think they're very good, but I don't know if there's anything in here that's like necessarily fully original. Anything that's like 100% original, because like the heist one, like that's really cool, but it's a heist movie, basically. You know, that's what it is. The Prison Break one, that's a Prison Break movie. It's very well done, but it's a Prison Break. The first three is the intro is kind of a bit different, but it's basically a flashback of someone, and you get their flashbacks of their origin kind of thing. You've kind of seen that before. These last two episodes, which were really good, again, really cool, but they aren't necessarily doing anything that's that different. So only on that basis, although I think the writing is really good and I think the acting is good for the most part and things, I don't know if it would get like best written series, because there are other series, like I would probably say Stranger Things series 4 to me has a more exciting narrative than Andor, but I think that Andor has a lot of other aspects that are better. I'm not saying Stranger Things or Andor are better or worse than each other. I think they're both phenomenal shows for different reasons. I just kind of, only on the basis of their potential, a lack of originality in the story. Like there wasn't anything in Andor that I'd seen that I was like, oh my God, I've never seen that before. Do you know where I'm kind of coming from?
Yeah, the kind of rehashing stories that we already know.
Yeah, in a very well way.
Yeah. Also, I think the writing regarding how the dialogue's being put across, you know, the speeches and things like that. Stellan Skarsgård and Andy Serkis, I think, are it's a shame we only got Andy Serkis for a couple of 3 episodes. But you was bought into his character. Stellan Skarsgård, he has had them so many different versions of him throughout. You know, that flourish that he did, I think, in episode 2 and that, where he put the wig on, he put the clothes on, put the rings on, and then he did this kind of flourish, and you kind of thought, oh, he put the mask on, and things like that. And then the dark side, when he's shouting at Lonnie, is, you know, I do think that at least nominated. Whether he wins or not is another thing, but I do think they should get nominated.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Well, are there any final things to add? We've been talking about Andor for nearly 2 hours. Before people give their plugs and things, and now Maff actually has social media, which is fun. So we've forced him into the spotlight. We've grabbed him and pulled him in, and now we're already setting up him doing his own show with us as well about Rebels. See, that's what happens, Maff. You guest on one thing, and then before you know it, you've already got your own podcast.
Just when you think you pull me back in.
Exactly. So are there anything else that we want to mention before we wrap up this Andor discussion? We'll go to Dave first.
No, again, just can't speak highly enough. The one thing that is slightly disappointing is that I think Disney have almost screwed the pooch with some of the things that have come out before. So I think Andor, people are feeling a little bit of content fatigue at the moment with Star Wars, Marvel, the DC stuff. So much stuff has come out. So I think a lot of people will take the opportunity to see Andor. It's like, what's that? Don't really care about it. We'll take that opportunity to just jump off and take a break from the Star Wars universe for a while.
Lots of my friends have said that.
Yeah. So I do think that, it will be word of mouth. It will be people like us who would say, who are those annoying people at the coffee machine? It's like, Andor is the best thing. And I was just checking back because one of in our Discord group, some of the occasional memes that just had me crying. The one that Spider Dan posted where it's like Simpsons and it's everyone in the classroom. It's like, say the line, Mike. It's Bart Simpson. He's like, Star Wars Rebels is one of the best pieces of Star Wars content.
That did kill me. I think
it's so good. It is so brilliant. And I think literally I saw that and then I was listening to something and you literally said the words and it was so good. But yeah, I do think this one will be a slow burn. I think it'll be like Rogue One where, a little bit of time and space afterwards, people are going to look back and recognize it for its brilliance, and so I don't think it's going to be one of those things that will totally blow people away in 2022, maybe not even 2023, but definitely people will look back and think this is a game changer. And I do think it is. As much as I love like Mandalorian and Obi-Wan, it's just different. And so for me, this, like say, what you walk into a room, it's opened a bunch of other doors, and who knows what other creators are going to create from those new doors that are being open now. So, no, I think it's just fantastic. I like I say, can't speak highly enough about this series.
And I think with the open doors, what I'd love to see do, and I want Marvel to do this more frequently as well, is do stuff like Werewolf by Night. We don't need, for certain characters, like Melshi, for example, there's apparently, according to the attention-seeking geek, when he spoke obviously on this show with Spider Dan and Maff as well, he mentioned that there might be a Melshi show in the works. And I'm like, I would watch it, but I think I'd rather just have a Melshi feature-length presentation. Like, here's an hour or 40 minutes of just what his life kind of was like before meeting it. And I wouldn't mind having a collection of episodes called, like, The Spark of the Rebellion or Tales of the Rebellion. And it's in live action, but it's just characters. Maybe we get a Mon Mothma special and we just get a little bit more bridging the gap between what happened with Mothma post episode 3 and where we see her in Andor. I would love to see a full Mothma series, but I don't think it would. I think it'd be so heavy in political intrigue and it not being at the point where everything starts to collapse, like is what's going to happen over the next few years from the point of Andor. But I would like to see her, a degree of her political career. So I think there's certain characters you could use that have appeared in this. Even Luthen Rail, almost any character has been in this. If I would love to see a special about them, not a whole movie, not a whole series, just one or two. So I think for me, this opening the door, I think the Acolyte, I think, is going to be in a very similar vein to this. I think it's going to be very mature content. It's going to be quite serious. It's going to be very subtle with certain things it's telling you. A lot of social commentary. That's what I'm hoping for with Acolyte. And if this can keep going, and Rogue One and they like the films they come out with and start to make and things, if they can be like, let's try and make them more mature, let's try and do them in this way, I think that Andor, as you say, will be the catalyst for this. And I think it'll be a slow burn, but I think a lot of people are going to watch it over Christmas and January because, as far as I know, apart from Bad Batch, which I don't think anyone who is going to watch Bad Batch won't have watched Andor. Animation is generally lower on people's priorities. So aside from Bad Batch that we're going to be getting in January, I don't think until Mando comes out, which I think is like spring 23 at the moment, is what the vague ideas are, we're not going to get any more Star Wars content, especially not live action. And I don't know when the next Marvel thing is coming out. I can't...
We've got Willow coming out next week.
I mean, I've never seen the film Willow. I'm going to try and watch over Christmas because our dog's named Willow after the Buffy character. But I'm like, and our tortoise is named Wicket after Warwick Davis's Ewok in Return of the Jedi. So I'm like, we kind of need to, if our dog's...
You've got to watch it.
Yeah, so I think at Christmas I'm going to try and get Megan to watch it.
I mean, I haven't gone back and watched the film. We're going to probably watch it this weekend before it's out next week, the series. So I don't know how well it's aged, but it was a favourite when I was younger.
I'm sure I made Chris watch.
Yeah, I think there's
no prizes, but I don't think he loved it.
Shit on toast. Can I just, if you've got this far and you haven't watched the episode, I'll just warn you, spoilers. There is an after credits.
Yes.
Which answers what they was making in the prison.
Which I think was what Dave, was it Dave, was it you who called? It was either you or Spider-Dan, I think, or it was someone on the discussion said, I bet it's something to do with the Death Star.
I don't remember, but if you want to credit me, that is okay as well. So I was definitely thinking it. It had to be. It was so mundane, but it was identical parts
And big ones.
Yeah, that were just tiny pieces of a massive jigsaw. So it's obviously going towards something huge. So yeah, I mean that was a proper. I mean, it was more than a Marvel after credit, wasn't it? It was like a holy shit, And again, it just considering the whole series focused on its own story, and then right at the end there, it tweaks that nostalgia.
Yeah.
It's just like it gets you, and it's like, oh, you bastards!
For a post-credits scene,
You've been forcing these people into this, labor, and they're making the Death Star, and these innocents have been contributing to this horrible instrument of death. So good.
But it's clever as well, because one of the things with the Death Star, they say that it got delayed because there was issues, which goes back to the prison riot. And
would this be a spoiler? I think Thrawn had some of his funds were diverted to elsewhere. I'm gonna pause there because I think that might be a spoiler.
I know what you're referring to.
Yeah,
I don't mind about spoilers. I really don't.
We're taking you through Rebels with as minimal spoilers as possible. Right. Okay,
I suppose if anyone else hasn't seen it as well.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. But anyone who's seen Rebels will know what you're referring to, Dave. I think so. Yeah, I think
the War Machine has got multiple arms to it, and there is not an infinite amount of cash. So Thrawn kind of had his funds cut so they could be diverted elsewhere, but he could have kind of squash the rebellion elsewhere. So, no, so good in it. It just, again, it's just this massive fertile land that you can just play with. But again, with that after credit, it brought it back to its nucleus, its center, the thing that we all love. And even though they keep repeating it in the movies, that is the thing that I love from the first movie. This ominous thing that terrifies everyone.
Yeah, a star of death, even though it's more of a moon. Is there anything else you want to add?
No space station.
Anything else you want to add, Maff, before we start to wrap up?
No, I think we've probably talked enough about it. So, but no, it's just. Hopefully, I'll get invited back for the season 2.
You definitely will.
So enjoyed this.
Yeah, and has it reignited? Because obviously, me and Dave, obviously, I'm the Star Wars guy in Comics in Motion, but Angry Andy's a massive Star Wars fan too, and obviously, there are a lot of other Star Wars fans who are big Star Wars fans as well, like Dave, and I know many other people are as well, from Rhea and things. Jack, I'm not going to keep naming everyone because I'm going to have to feel like I have to not name anyone.
Yeah.
Most people are some degree of fans of Star Wars. Some just watch the movies, some watch the series, and etc. But yeah, this. Maff will definitely invite you back because it's always enjoyable having that. But it is that perspective of a show like Andor being. Has it reignited your sort of intrigue into Star Wars, where some of the movies you're like, oh yeah, prequels weren't as exciting. Oh, the sequels were good, but not amazing. I'm still kind of. Has this been a show that you feel like might have reignited your love for Star Wars?
The thing is. Mandalorian came out and I didn't watch it straight away, and then I started to watch it, and I think something else came out round about near the end of it, so I never finished it. And then season 2 came out, I thought I need to go back and watch it. But it's sometimes you get that point where it's like there's so much going on, and it's like, oh, there's how many episodes? Oh my word! With Rebels is different. I can probably get away with watching a lot of that with my son. But yeah, it made me feel what Star Wars made me feel when Star Wars came out, I think, the year before I was born, actually. But I grew up watching the first 3 over and over again, and that. this has reignited something that was in there, and that to make me now think, right, I will go back, I will watch the rest. I'll probably restart Mandalorian because I can't remember where I got to.
You should.
I will watch Book of Boba Fett. I know you seem to kind of rate it higher than what I've heard. So, but then again, I don't know. And I have gone back and I've rewatched Rogue One. And Rogue One hits me different this time than what it did the first time because I know more about Cassian. So that end scene, spoilers for end of Rogue One, everyone dies. That end scene felt a lot more this time round than just, before when you think, Cassian's kind of in there, but he's only in there for certain parts, but it felt a lot more. So going back and watching some of the other Star Wars stuff now, hopefully that'll just keep that reignited.
Yeah. And like I said to any listeners, if you like Andor, you'll probably like Mandalorian, but it's not quite as high concept in a lot of ways, but it's a really good show, Mando. And also Mando is a bit shorter. The episodes are a bit shorter, and each season is shorter than Andor as well. And I would say, while we're in this Christmas break, as we're going into that, as in January, there's not as much Star Wars content for the fans aren't watching every single piece of animated content that comes out. So I would say, watch Mandalorian if you haven't already. Book of Boba Fett, just watch it before Mandalorian Series 3 comes out. You don't need to rush to watch it. But if it gets a few weeks before Mandalorian Series 3 comes out and you haven't watched Book of Boba Fett, just either look online or ask me, and I will tell you 2 episodes you literally have to watch. Otherwise, Mandalorian Series 3 won't make any sense. I'm sure they'll do a little recappy thing, but that won't be the same.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you have time, Maff. Don't you worry. And also Rebels, if for some reason your son isn't interested in Rebels, they're only 20-minute long episodes. So you can watch one basically every night in the time it would take, a partner to almost brush their teeth. But you won't want to. You'll want to binge it. You'll want to delve. You'll watch 1 or 2 episodes. You'll be like, this is quite cool. You get through series 1, you're like, this is good. And then you get to series 2, you're like, oh. And then you get to series 3, it's like, I need to watch every episode constantly. But before, we have been chatting for a long time, and it's been delightful, but we need to wrap this up. So, my friends, let's just give our plugs. Maff, I'll go to you first, if only because you have the least amount of things to promote out of me and Dave.
I am on Twitter now, and I still... It's still a little bit. It seems to be a bit all over the places trying to read stuff and that, but I'm kind of getting the hang of it. I'm on there mainly so that I can vote on the drafts and things like that. Which that's another thing I'm going to be on at some point.
Amazing.
I get the villains.
Oh, that's a fun one.
No spoilers of my team. I think whoever gets that first pick may have a upper hand, and that, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm Maff78 on Twitter. So if you really want to reach out to me and tell me to stop talking, that's fine.
And just keep an ear out for all the other things, because we've done it in Comics in Motion. It's Dave's fault. He did it with me. I literally just started doing a collaboration thing. Like, let's just watch a couple of Star Wars films. After I did like Dread, I did that, and that was cool. And then we're like, do you want to do a bit of Star Wars? I was like, yeah, I love a bit of Star Wars. Let's do a couple of Star Wars episodes of Collaborative 20th Century Geek. Yeah. God, Mike, you know a lot about Star Wars. Do you want to do a Star Wars show? Yes, I will, Dave. And now I've got like all the Star Wars comics and everything. And now it's like, because of the podcast, all the Star Wars bits I missed, because I was like, I don't need to read that book, or I'm not that fussed about that comic run anymore. Because of that, forced me back in, and I've just... in a great way, I'm like drowning in Star Wars.
Pulled you back in.
Yep. So thank you, Dave. But please tell people about yourself and where people can find you. Everywhere is the answer to that question.
Everywhere is generally the answer. But I mean, again, just hats off to you, because you say it like it's me, but I mean, what you've done and what you've created. I mean, so what Disney are trying to do with Star Wars, and I know there's a lot of detractors, but with how they're trying to keep one consistent canon across all media. So I love like Marvel, but if you go to novels, you go to the comics, you go to the movies, you go to the animated shows, it's all different and no one cares. Whereas Star Wars are trying to keep that linear thread. And so by classifying certain things as legends, they pissed a whole bunch of the internet off. But at least they're saying this is our vision and this is what we're going to do. And yes, not everything makes 100% sense, but 95% of it does. And so I love the fact, I love listening to you, that where you connect the dots of things that I would never get. So I read the occasional comics, and there's a character that pops up and I've got no idea, but you'll say, oh, well, he appeared in this point over here and stuff. So absolutely brilliant. I love listening to what you do. But in terms of me, you can get me at Seattle Dojos on Twitter at the moment. I've explored Mastodon. I just think Elon Musk is a total dick. So I'm trying to avoid that, but I do have I do kind of like Twitter, but I'm wrestling with the fact of whether I want to completely detach. I just wish he wouldn't stop appearing in my notifications. Fuck off. I don't care what you say. If you own it or not, fuck off. Podcasts, you can get me on Comics in Motion. You can get me on VHS Strikes Back. You can get me on Chris Dave's Reality TV Cast. While the World Cup's on, you can get me on Chat Footy as well. Recently, I've appeared on Geek Girl Soup to discuss a movie called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. Am I missing anything out? So coming up, I'll be on 20th Century Geek as well with Maff, discussing the Police Academy first 4 movies, or otherwise known as the Gutenberg years. And we go into more depth and more analytical discussion than probably anyone on the planet has ever done. So all of those places. But it was a ton of fun. It was a load of fun, wasn't it? So, I just love it. I just love talking about this shit, with people who also love talking about this shit.
Whenever I come up with podcast ideas of certain things, I'm just like, I just want to talk about this idea with someone. And I just find, who can I talk to about this? So it's like the Rebels thing now that you've started, and I'm ultra excited about. I'm going to choose my time to tell Megan about it.
Me too.
I'm just like, I can't wait.
Yeah,
it's because we do so many podcasts.
Great.
So much of the media we consume is to do. I have to keep up to all the MCU stuff. I don't watch almost any of the DC stuff. I haven't watched Black Adam. I haven't watched Peacemaker. I haven't watched any of the other sort of things there. But MCU I can keep up with, and all the Star Wars stuff I can keep up with. And then when I do podcasts about certain other things, where it's like I need to watch this movie or this one, like the Disney discussions as well. So it's like so much of my content is, I know that you've got it, Dave, because you've got the reality cast.
Yeah. Oh my God. Fucking Australian Love Island at the minute. But I'm going to send you the intro sequence to Peacemaker. That is a series you've got to watch. So as much as I evangelize about, people you need to watch Andor, you need to watch Peacemaker. It's really good.
I'll have to do that when I've got free time away from Megan, because she hated Suicide Squad. So the Suicide Squad.
Well, if you just watch, it's about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes, something. Just the opening sequence. It's just a brilliant bit of James Gunn choreography. So I'll send it you through.
That sounds good. Amazing. So with myself, you can find me on social media at Genuine Chit-Chat. That's on Instagram, Twitter, and on Facebook. I'm not on Hive or Mastodon yet, partly because I can't really be asked at the moment, to be fair. There's just so much. I should be on TikTok as well, because so many Star Wars YouTubers and content creators are, but it's just effort, isn't it? But if you go on there, you can find photos of many of the comics that I tackle on Comics in Canon. And you can also, if you go to youtube.com/Genuine Chit-Chat as well, you can find all my episodes of Star Wars Comics in Canon in playlists, and every episode of Genuine Chit-Chat in playlists. There's video versions of many of the videos on there as well, of my conversations. And also myself and Dave, I think it would be coming out tomorrow. We recorded our thoughts on Tales of the Jedi, which is a 6-part animated series about 2 characters from the Clone Wars era, Ahsoka Tano and Count Dooku. So we gave our thoughts and opinions on that, and we spoke about loads of other stuff for a while as well, still related to Star Wars, but we spoke about Tales of the Jedi, I think, for longer than the actual whole series is. So lots of fun there. That'll be out, I said, tomorrow instead of a normal episode of Star Wars Comics in Canon, and then I'll resume normal normal programming from there. And also make sure you check out the 50th episode of Geek, which is Super Dummy Paul's show, because I had the absolute privilege of interviewing him. Because if anyone's unaware, Era of Geek, find it on your podcast app and things, and also on Dummy's Guide to Geekdom on YouTube. He basically talks to people about what makes someone a geek, what people's own geeky, nerdy experiences are, their geek origin stories in some ways, what they love, some of the experiences they've had, some negative, some positive around geek culture. I've been on there, Dave's been on there, lots of people of Comics in Motion have been, and there are going to be many more to come. But for episode 50, it was him in the chair, because Paul doesn't, if you listen to early episodes, he edits himself out so that the person talking gets the spotlight. So all the listeners were like, we want to hear more about Paul. So that I had the pleasure of interviewing him and giving him a taste of his own medicine, turning the tables. So make sure you check that out. I'll put links to that in the description, as well as the many other things that have been spoken about. So, my friends, we're at the end of the Andor journey, with the longest recording of our Andor discussions so far. And in doing that, we've literally created another podcast show for 2023 that you guys can be very excited for. And Maff can't get out now. It's too far gone. You've gone in. You're in the prison, and you're looking at that timer of how much longer till you can evade Comics in Motion, and it keeps going up. How many more episodes are you going to be featuring on? Only a month or two ago, I didn't even really get involved with podcasts. Now I've been on 3 or 4 episodes of the Andor discussion show. I'm on 20th Century Geek. I'm going to be starting a Rebels watch through series as well, and there's stuff in the background going on as well.
I'm sure there was one way out at one point.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for joining on this journey, and obviously Maff especially for jumping in at times when we needed you. You are our only hope at times, and you did a great job. So thank you very much. It's delightful meeting you properly, Maff, and we'll definitely organise that Rebels thing. But my friends, thank you for tuning in. Follow Comics in Motion at Comics in Motion P on Instagram and on Twitter. On Facebook, it's Comics in Motion Podcast, and you can keep up to date with all the various things, and subscribe to the Comics in Motion podcast feed to hear all of the incredible shows we have got on this program. So, we will talk to you at some point soon, not about Andor because we've got a while before that, but we'll talk to you soon about other shows, MCU, Star Wars, and other stuff on this feed. So thank you for listening, and as always, may the Force be with you.